to the Rob Burgess Show. I am, of course, your host, Rob Burgess. On this, our 167th episode, our returning guest is Jonathan Fowler. You first heard Jonathan Fowler in episodes 2, 10, 20, 21, 29, 30, 31, 32, 34, 35, 43, 48, 51, 56, 64, 74, 83, 92, 102, 103, 104, 105, 106, 107, 108, 109, 111, 114, 115, 116, 119, 126, 127, 133, 137, 140, 146, 147, 149, 153, 156, 158, 160, 162, 164, and episode 82, which also featured fellow regular guest Ash Burgess of the podcast. Jonathan graduated with a BA in history from Indiana University in 2006. He is an unabashed left-wing political junkie. He has lived and worked in South Korea for over 10 years, trying to help the citizens of that great nation hopefully talk pretty one day. A quick programming note. This is the first of 3 episodes which were recorded before the pandemic began and the Democratic presidential debates were still going. My plan was to drop in original audio between our conversation as I had done in previous episodes, but then everything happened. The Indiana primary was moved back to June 2nd, so technically, even though Joe Biden is now the presumptive nominee, these episodes aren't technically late. I was concerned these would be lost episodes, but luckily, since time is now a flat circle, you're free to enjoy this conversation, though without the original audio clips. And now on to the show.
Yeah, we've kind of got a unique situation as far as we've kind of crossed our wires about which debate we're watching and so forth.
That's all right. How did you make any progress with the PBS one?
Well, I made it through the first issue, which was, let's see. Well, you know, congressional Democrats haven't convinced a strong majority of Americans to support impeachment like they did in 1974. So why not, or what can we do about that, or something? And then I was starting the economy, but then I don't know, I finished my lunch and I came back and I got some other things done as far as the other debate and stuff. So I ended up, I've got like 11 pages on the CNN debate and with extra notes and stuff, but then it's
Right.
kind of a crazy situation. I did go through some of the highlights. I got some of the highlights, the wine cave, the stop waving your arm at me, Bernie, and this kind of thing. Yeah, well, I got a few of the highlights.
Yeah, well, maybe just for time's sake, maybe we'll just run through the highlights of the PBS debate real quick.
Okay.
And then we'll just barrel right into the CNN one because I know you got a lot to say. So basically, I thought like I said, the wine cave moment was probably the highlight of the PBS debate for me personally. This is the moment when Elizabeth Warren and Pete Buttigieg went at each other. As I remember, it was to do with his courting of billionaire donors. And Elizabeth Warren kind of drawing the distinction that she gets the individual contributions, Pete Buttigieg fighting back, saying that he's worth 100th of what she is, and that he wouldn't have a seat at the table without it. But anyway, what did you get a chance to watch that moment?
Yeah, and it seems like there's something where she had taken big dollar donations in her last senatorial campaign, and then she had transferred them to her presidential campaign without taking new big donations. So she's able to say that she's not taking the money, but actually she kind of already took the money.
Right.
And I don't know. I mean, I think I guess he is worth a lot less than she is. At the same time, he's half of her age. So, I mean, I don't know how people in our generation are supposed to have accumulated the amount of wealth that maybe our parents' generation may have been able to accumulate. So
yeah, it's just interesting to see the Democrats fighting about who has less money, and that being more of a reality touchstone or whatever, because it's like Trump runs on how rich he is, so it's kind of funny to see the contrast there, but.
Yeah. Well, Warren mentioned that the wine cave had like crystals everywhere, and that the bottles started at $900 a bottle of wine or something like that.
Yeah.
Billionaires or something were in attendance or something, and it's kind of like, I mean, do we have any images of this cave? Whose wine cave was it? Can we see some photos?
Right. Exactly. Yeah, I don't know. That didn't move the needle much for me in either direction. But I guess we should just say who was at the PBS debate just for consistency's sake. We had Let's see, Joe Biden, Pete Buttigieg. I almost said John Delaney, but no.
Is he
Tulsi
still
Gabbard
in?
was also. Yeah, he's still there, as far as I know. Tulsi was not there, also. Thank goodness for either of those.
Bob, I think we've got to say who was there. We can't say this one was there, that one was not there, because at the end of the day, a listener is just going to be like, wait, I heard a lot of names.
All right, at the PBS debate, we had Joe Biden, Pete Buttigieg, Amy Klobuchar, Bernie Sanders, Tom Steyer, Elizabeth Warren, and Andrew Yang. The only difference between that and the CNN debate was Andrew Yang was not at the CNN debate. Everyone else I mentioned just now was. So we're paring it down. There was only 6 at the CNN debate. There were 7 at the PBS one, and that's a far cry from where we started in the first debate, where we had split it into 2 nights, and it was almost 20 people. So.
Yeah, it's getting down, and I don't know. I will say that, I mean, the smaller number of people. I don't know. I'm still finding these things very frustrating to get through. I mean, it's just. I mean, I don't know. I want these people to go into a debate totally unprepared. That's what I want. Because I don't like this thing where everybody comes into the debate and they've all memorized these little factoids that they want to throw in there, not to clarify anything really, but just to kind of confuse the issue about what they actually believe or who, and I'm not saying this like against Democrats. I mean, all politicians at all debates do it. You can watch it in the Republican debates when they have those too. People try to one up each other about how, you're a centrist. No. Actually, on this one little criteria, I'm very left wing, as you can see, or I'm very right wing. It's just, and it really just confuses the issue. And a lot of times people, I think you and I have both been very critical of people who, frankly, even people perhaps in some cases within our own families who, my first choice is Warren, but my second choice is Klobuchar or Buttigieg. It's like, these people are not ideologically similar, So what is the criteria you're using to jump from one to the other? People who say, the statistic is that, what do they say? They say for most Bernie people, their second choice is Biden, which ideologically doesn't make a lot of sense. So what is that? But I think, obviously some people are just hypocrites or whatever, or they like the idea of sounding informed, but they don't actually, care to do the legwork of figuring out, what kinds of things do these different people actually believe that are similar or different to each other. But on the other hand, my point I'm trying to get to is that the candidates themselves confuse the issue so much that you could almost be excused for thinking that somebody was more left wing than they actually are, or more centrist than they actually are, based on how they answer questions in these debates. So.
Yeah, it's not the greatest format for sure. So
yeah, it's I don't know. I was banging my head up against the wall trying to finish the CNN debate, especially trying to get through mostly Amy Klobuchar's answers, where she was, she was really wanting to have it every which way, but honest, as far as I could tell. Like she would latch on to one little thing, or she'd try to make a whole argument. I don't know. We'll get to it later, but some of it was just absolutely maddening. So, yeah. So what was going on at the point where in the PBS debate where Bernie had his arm up and Biden kind of called him out for that and said, "Put your arm down for a second, Bernie, okay?" And Bernie says, "Just waving at you, Joe." And he says, "Okay." And he's like, "Just saying hello." What was that? What was the context of that moment?
I don't know. Yeah, it was an interesting thing because I think I almost remember Hillary Clinton taking him to task for that waving his arms or putting his arm up in the talk to the hand type of way during a previous debate. So I don't know. This seems to be like a centrist talking point about Bernie, is that he like waves his arms around too much or something. I don't know.
Yeah, well, I will say back in like 2015 or something, like there was a panel he was on some TV show or something, and he had his arms up in a way that it was kind of blocking a woman that was sitting next to him or something. And it was not a great look. I don't know. I don't think that he was really conscious what he was even doing or something at that moment. I don't remember exactly what panel it was. I don't remember if it was the Bill Maher show or, if it was something on CNN or MSNBC or whatever. But that's different, I think, from being in a debate and raising your hand because you want to have a chance to respond to somebody. I mean, as long as your arm is not in somebody's face, I think it's not a problem. So.
Right. Well, I just looked the transcript up of the PBS debate, and it looked like it was about 56 minutes in, and they were talking about Medicare for all, and Joe
course.
Biden was saying, by making sure that we're able to cover everyone who is in fact able to be covered. Put your hand down for a second, Bernie, okay? Just wave it to you, Joe. I know. So look, covers everybody. It's realistic and most important. So it's like Joe Biden was talking about his health care plan. I'm sure Bernie was
Bernie Sanders has a
correct him
problem
on
with
some.
that.
Yeah, I'm sure he does.
Yeah.
So that was that moment.
So this was the sixth Democratic debate. It was hosted by PBS NewsHour and Politico. Hosted in LA, California at some university out there. And this was on December 20th, 2019. So last month, almost a little bit over a month ago. And the hosts were Judy Woodruff, I think from PBS, Amnam Nawaz from PBS, Tim Alberta from Politico, and Yamiche Alcindor, I think maybe from PBS. I don't know. Yeah. Yeah, it was, I'll confess.
It was Loyola Marymount University.
There you go. Okay. All
right. What were we going to say?
Yeah, I strongly regret. Actually, I thought I was watching this debate until we got to the point in the debate where Bernie and Elizabeth Warren went after each other. And that was when I realized that I was actually watching the January debate, the most recent one. I was like, oh my God, okay.
Well, I'm not even saying this because of recency bias or whatever, but I do think that the CNN debate was more newsworthy than the PBS debate. I'm not saying nothing important happened. I thought there were several moments that we could talk about, and I'm sure if we want to go back, if you'd still watch the PBS debate after we record and you see anything you want to talk about, we can definitely do that. But as far as like newsworthiness, I think the CNN debate, especially the dust up between Bernie and Warren, was definitely more substantive, at least in the context of newsworthiness. So
yeah, that was my feeling too. And we're heading towards the Iowa caucus. I think it's on February 3rd. And just and I know you do backbreaking work, Bob, putting these things out with the amount of post-production you do on them and stuff, but I do hope we can get this one out before the Iowa caucuses, just to
I'm
give people a chance.
Gonna try for sure. So
yeah, I would say in this one, speed is more important than accuracy, perhaps. if you have to emphasize one or the other, but
sure.
All right, so coming to the CNN Des Moines Register debate in Des Moines, Iowa, on January 14th, 2020, so about 10 days ago. So this one, we've had much less prep time, but I somehow have done much more prep for. We have Wolf Blitzer, Abby Phillip, and Brianne Pfannenstiel. That's a hard name to pronounce. It's got a P and an F together.
Yeah.
And I'm just going to go out on a limb here and just say I was prepared for Wolf Blitzer to be a terrible debate moderator, but I think Abby Phillip took the cake on a number of questions. So, so that was the thing. And of course, our members for this debate included, Pete Buttigieg, Elizabeth Warren, Joe Biden, Bernie Sanders, Amy Klobuchar, and Tom Steyer. Okay. So you got a situation.
They're having fun, believe it or not. So just go ahead.
Okay. Sounds like the debate's getting out of hand.
Yeah,
again.
Exactly.
All right. Well, anyways, so our first topic of the night at the CNN debate was Iran. And they went person by person and everything. Let's see. Bernie Sanders said, I was against the war in Iraq. Sorry. Okay. let's see, and obviously he's throwing some shade at Biden right there by saying that. And Joe Biden said, 13 years ago, I said it was a mistake, and Obama picked me in spite of my Iraq vote and asked me to end that war. Bernie Sanders said he supported the Afghanistan war, but he now says it was a mistake. He criticized Biden for the Iraq vote and said, we both listened to the Bush administration. I didn't believe them.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see. And I made a note. I think it's interesting. I don't know. I think it's interesting that we are, now almost 20 years removed, we're looking back at the Afghanistan war vote as a mistake or as the wrong thing. And, I know the Afghanistan papers came out recently and it was revealed that, basically generations of generals have been, lying to generations of politicians about the, effectiveness of the war. We're just about to turn the corner and this and that. Nothing surprising at all there for me. I don't know. But at the same time, I know it's kind of fashionable, especially on the left, to say, you were against the Afghan war before it was cool. Which reminds me kind of a joke. What did they say? Hey Bob, why did the hipster burn his mouth?
What is that?
Because he drank the coffee before it was cool.
Nice.
So yeah, I heard that somewhere. I don't remember where I heard it, but I like it. But like honestly, I mean, I think one thing that everybody has to be really careful about, including on the left, is just to try to go back in history and make yourself like having the correct opinion kind of post facto. Like, I mean, in 2001, 3,000 people had just been killed in America by a terrorist group that was being sheltered in Afghanistan. I'm not so sure that they didn't deserve a war. Like, you can argue about the effectiveness of it, the goals of that, the methodology, there's a million things you can criticize about what happened after that, but I don't know what a world would look like where we didn't respond militarily to somebody flying planes into several buildings in America and killing 8,000 people is like, and I don't think, a lot of people who weren't in Congress, weren't in the presidency at that time, weren't in politics yet, have the luxury of saying that they were against it when they didn't actually have to go on the record for it. It would be fascinating to see how many of them had the courage of their convictions back in, September and October 2001.
Well, it's interesting how the common wisdom changes on especially Afghanistan, because I remember when it was kind of the radical outside thing to be against the Iraq War, and Bernie was seen as kind of like an outcast for supporting that. Now it's like conventional wisdom, and he's ahead of his time. But it's like even he wasn't as ahead of his time as apparently he needs to be now, because he wasn't against the Afghanistan war as well, even though, as he pointed out, everyone except for Barbara Lee voted against it or for it. So it's like, it's easy to say, it's also a symptom of the Democratic Party that this is an issue, because to be progressive, you have to be forward looking and always trying to like catch the next wave before it's like crusted. So it's like, I don't feel like this is a problem as much for conservatives, because it's like they just can say the same thing for years, and that's part of their appeal, is that they're supposed to be conservative or whatever. But I don't know. So
yeah, and like, I mean, and conservatives can say whatever the hell they want, but they don't have to reckon with that as far as like what the next thing is. Like Donald Trump said, "Oh, Iraq was a big mistake. I said Iraq was a big mistake at the time." He kind of said both things at the time, actually. But then he puts us in a situation on a track to get into a war with Afghanistan for, I don't know. I mean, similarly poor reasoning with similarly bad outcomes. I mean, the fact that we are not at war with Iran right now is more attributable to the fact that Iran is smarter than we are, frankly, now with this administration, than to anything that this administration did. If Afghanistan had bombed people without warning them and had killed 30 or 40 Americans, 34 Americans, instead of just giving them traumatic brain injuries, which is apparently now what's happened, Trump's hand would have been forced. We would have had to respond again, and we would probably be in the middle of a war right now. And so for him to during the campaign to say, "Oh, I was against the Iraq war," okay, well, what would you do to avoid a war with another country right next to Iraq in the region, under similarly bad, I don't know, maladministration, for lack of a better word. I mean, like, how are you going to govern the country in a way internationally that's not going to lead us into a war with a similar situation? It's like you can say you were against the Iraq war, but why? And, how? And, like, how is that going to be different in the future? It's exasperating, but whatever.
Right.
Let's see. Amy Klobuchar said, I had different experiences from Buttigieg. Donald Trump is taking us pell-mell towards another war. Pell-mell. I think that's a brand of cigarettes. So Buttigieg said something after that because obviously, he and Klobuchar were going back and forth a little bit. She was, I think, disparaging him. She has disparaged him a little bit for being a small town mayor. And he said, I was in the military. And she's like, okay, I respect your military service, but you also have to respect all of our experiences here too. Mm-hmm. Stuff like that. Elizabeth Warren, I sit on the Armed Services Committee. I visit our troops. I have 3 brothers. Bob, what do you know about Elizabeth Warren's 3 brothers?
Well, they're Republicans, 2 of them, and they served in the military. Is that what?
They served in the military. Elizabeth Warren, Bob, did you know she has 3 brothers and they served in the military?
Yeah, I've heard that once or twice.
Where did you hear it?
I believe from Elizabeth Warren several times during the debates.
Really? Yeah. The one thing I know about Elizabeth Warren from every debate she's ever been in is that she has 3 brothers who were in the military. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Let it go, Elizabeth. We get it.
Yeah, but I mean, she doesn't have any military experience to speak of, which is fine. I don't either. But you know what I mean? It's like she does bring up that brothers in the military thing. Well,
Tulsi Gabbard's off the stage. Let it go.
Pete's still there.
Tulsi Gabbard's not up there challenging everybody's gangster anymore. So just, take it down a notch, Elizabeth.
Fair enough.
Let's see. Steyer said, I've traveled around the world in my business capacity. Barbara Boxer was the only one to oppose the Afghanistan war. Yeah, I don't know. I will say, and this is a little bit, is this liberal treason to say that, Tom Steyer is coming out looking better and better in this debate?
This is something I wanted to talk to you about, because I was like, every time I heard Tom Steyer, it was like, all right, I'm ready to hate this guy. Billionaire, stupid, thinks he can just ride his way into the race. And then every time he talked, I'm like, yeah, all right. Okay, all right, good points. You got points. All right, fine. Go ahead. So I'm like, what is it that we don't like about him exactly? What are we supposed to not like about him? I'm just wondering.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we'll get into some stuff on, like, perhaps I think like there was something on college. He wants free college for most, but not for all. He said, which again it comes down to this argument over what do they call it? Testing. No, what do they call it? Means testing it basically comes down to a liberal argument over means testing. And I think he said something on healthcare too that was not amazing, but yeah, other than that, like, I mean, the guy, I don't want to be a class traitor, but like,
he was pushing for impeachment before anyone. He's taken up the mantle of climate change from Jay Inslee as his number 1 issue. He's doing all these things that,
if he wants to be Bernie Sanders light, like, I'm not going to throw him out of the race before I throw several other people out. That's all I'm saying.
Amy Klobuchar, I'm looking real hard at you.
Yep. So, yeah, he was, I got to say, we'll get into his answers more later, but like, he was not sounding bad, and like,
not at all.
We'll get to that. Let's see. Wolf Blitzer's pronunciation of the Grand Ayatollah Khomeini.
Khomeini?
Yeah, that I don't think that's. I don't know. I feel
like that's a newscaster thing, because I feel like anytime they pronounce a foreign term. I think they
Yeah.
stand in front of their dressing room mirror for 10 minutes, looking at themselves pronouncing it, so that when it comes up, they're instantly able to go into the perfectly enunciated, accented, natural
Yeah.
speaking of it. It
I
almost
was
comes out worse or something.
I was curious, I mean, Wolf Blitzer's Jewish and everything, and I don't know if this is a thing where he's trying to be more authentic about the way he pronounces Middle Eastern names, but was that really more authentic or something? I'll have to watch some news footage of actual Iranians pronouncing, yeah, it's Khomeini, isn't it? It's
That's
not
as
home.
far as I know. Far as I know.
I don't know.
So,
We'll have to hear how it's actually pronounced, but it stood out to me that he pronounced it that way. He asked the question, why pull out of the Middle East when last time we did, ISIS sprang up? I'm paraphrasing, which I don't know. Again, this is an issue. I think that's not a bad question to ask. I mean, I think that that's something that a lot of the anti-war left needs to deal with, is the the absence of American power in a region does not guarantee peace and prosperity and good times for that region. It oftentimes just means that some other very unsavory folks will take power there. I mean, look what happened when we pulled out of Syria, which was entirely predictable. This is, people have been saying, I've been arguing for years, we may have to leave troops in these places for a long time. I mean, that's what we did in Germany and Japan and Korea, and look at Germany and Japan and Korea today. But people are like, no, we need to pull out right now. Okay, well, I would say, well, you do that and you get a situation like Syria. And it's, it's predictable and it's replicable. It'll happen again if we do it in other places. So what's the answer for that? So
yeah, nature abhors a vacuum. So
yeah. So do I, if you saw my floor.
Sing.
Yeah.
Take that, floor.
Yeah, doing it for the pod, Bob. So, let's see. Well, let's see. Well, anyway, so Wolf Blitzer asks this question but it was kind of a loose question. And it was, in the answers, it was kind of unclear who was advocating for total withdrawal versus leaving combat troops only versus only leaving special forces. People were, again, I think people were trying to skate by with answers that, looked maximally left wing while also leaving them the movement, the wiggle room to leave as many troops as they actually want to in the region. So Sanders said Vietnam and Iraq were greatest foreign policy disasters of our generation. They were both based on lies. We need an international coalition, and Iran should never get a nuclear weapon. Okay. Joe Biden said leave troops in the Middle East, patrolling the Gulf, small numbers, and contain ISIS. Okay. Probably, I don't know. Yeah. Klobuchar said leave some troops, bring Afghan troops home. Some would remain for counterterrorism training. I would have left troops in Syria, leave troops in Iraq. Okay, so again, we're starting to see this wiggle room on Afghanistan. Bring the Afghan troops home, but some would remain for counterterrorism training. Okay, so we're not really bringing all the troops home then, are we? I mean, I don't know. Maybe I'm just being too absolutist or something, but. And Elizabeth Warren said, get our combat troops out. Again, the inclusion of the word combat troops, well, what about peacekeeping troops? What about, training troops? What about special forces troops? Are those combat, again, it seems like she's trying to get some wiggle room. No, we're going to bring our combat troops out. Okay, so we're bringing the troops out. Yeah, we're getting all the troops out. No, we're leaving some. It seems like, again, it's kind of like trying to have it both ways. And then she said, shoot, Lindsey Graham talks about leaving troops there for 100 more years in Afghanistan. And I'm thinking, Lindsey Graham's an idiot on a lot of things, but I don't know. South Korea was a tin-pot dictatorship until well into the 80s. And then suddenly, slowly and surely, with a lot of work and a lot of protest, it wasn't anymore. And it's kind of a continuing process. But if we'd pulled American soldiers out of Korea in, let's say, 1970, they would have been steamrolled by North Korea, or at very best case scenario, they would have continued to be a right-wing dictatorship until today, no doubt. I mean, like, I'm Lindsey Graham's a scumbag, but I'm not going to say every single thing that he ever says is wrong. And it's like, yeah, we may have to leave troops there for a while. But I don't know. It depends on whether you think America is even capable of, shaping a country into some sort of a representative democracy anymore. Or, how we did it in the past. But
right.
Okay. Anyways, yeah, we're really wrestling with these things. So. All right. Next question, Bob, was military action without congressional approval, other than direct attack or something. Joe Biden said something. Buttigieg said replace authorization for the use of force. He said, if our troops have the courage to, go to these war zones, then Congress has to have the courage to vote up or down. He said he would have put a 3-year sunset on votes for the authorization of the use of force, which is probably a good idea.
Yeah, I like that. That was good.
Yeah, that way. I mean, I think a big part of the weakening of Congress and the Senate over the past 20 years has been the abdication of the responsibility for the votes of use of force. I mean, since, what was it, 2001, 2002, they haven't taken another vote on that, and they don't want to, right?
Right.
And they don't want to take that responsibility because they, that's a vote. They saw how, like, the vote for the Iraq thing, that's followed people for 20 years, basically. It's followed, it's killed Hillary Clinton's campaign to some degree. It killed, Joe Biden a little bit. It's a thing that's continued to hurt politicians for a long time. So, but by abdicating that responsibility, I think they've ceded a lot of responsibility to the executive to, mismanage wars and stuff. Elizabeth Warren says that if there's an imminent threat, we should respond without congressional approval. But she said we've turned the corner so many times we're going in circles in the region. So, yeah. I think she was complaining about the Afghanistan and the general saying we're about to turn the corner. We're about to turn the corner again and again. Tom Steyer talked about value-driven coalition building. Buttigieg said our security depends on Iran not becoming nuclear, less, not more nuclear danger in the world, I think. And I'm not so sure about that. I'm not so sure that our security depends on Iran not becoming nuclear. I don't know. Aside from, I guess there's a fear that Iran may just move their nukes around to all their regional, proxies or whatever. I don't know that would actually happen. I'm not in the CIA, so I don't know. But I think I don't think that they would want to have their fingerprints on, a nuke going off somewhere that they had not intentionally set off, but that they could be linked to building or procuring or providing to somebody else. And Amy Klobuchar says negotiate with Iran if possible. Again, I think that's a big if after Trump.
Right.
Yeah. So any thoughts on the Middle East stuff? Or?
No, I think you covered most of it. I mean, yeah, it's easy to say, just bring all the troops out. I actually thought Joe Biden, was pretty upfront about leaving troops in. So to credit to him on that, he didn't try to have it both ways. So.
Yeah. But, and I know this is a little bit of, a liberal left-wing Twitter sacrilege or something to say, but it's like, I don't know, it's not just a matter of do we want to say we lost the war? Do we want to say we're going to continue to try to win the war? It's a matter of, do we want entire region of the world to, devolve to the point where we will have another 9/11 in 20 years or something? It's, just, I think a lot of lessons from that before time period haven't been learned. So, anyways, sure. Okay. Well, our next topic was meet with North Korea without preconditions. Okay. Joe Biden said, not now. Put pressure on China to put pressure on North Korea. Or he said on Korea. I think he meant North Korea, not
Yeah,
South
I
Korea.
noticed
But
that too.
it's like, okay,
Two of us over here, if pick one.
yeah. There's a lot of pressure on Korea from different places, but yeah, I don't know. I don't think we want China to put more pressure on South Korea.
No.
But again, Joe Biden, it was recently revealed that he stutters, right? And that's
Mm.
a sad story when we feel bad for the guy, but I don't think all of his gaffes can be attributable to stuttering. I think some of them are just he's a little bit lazy and imprecise with his words sometimes.
Yeah, exactly.
Um, did you see the thing he did recently where a reporter was asking him a question and he turns around and he like, what does he yell? He yells something again and again and again. Hey, 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 or something.
Mm.
Did
No,
you
I
see
didn't.
this one?
No. Mm-mm.
Not a good look. Not a good look. You got to drop the audio in here when you find it.
Mm.
It was not great. I mean, the camera angle was terrible. He looks about 50 years older than he normally does.
Mm.
And he's, I don't know. Yeah, you'll have to drop it in there because I can't even get the context right now, but it was not a good response, basically.
Yeah, no, I've not seen that.
Okay, he said, well, absent preconditions, I would not meet with the quote supreme leader who said Joe Biden is a rabid dog. He should be beaten to death with a stick. I count that. And Bernie Sanders says, other than that, you like him. It's like, other than that, I like him. And he got a love letter from Trump right after. So that was kind of a funny exchange. I think, frankly, it would almost be funny if Bernie Sanders took Joe Biden as his vice president just because we get a whole bunch of those memes, like we used to have with Obama and Biden, where they're like these, these two kind of like buddy cop kind of figures or something.
Yeah.
I do think like the dynamic between Biden and Sanders would be hilarious if they were serving together, but that's a different movie than the reality we currently live in. So,
Yeah.
let's see. Tom Steyer said he would not meet with North Korea without preconditions. He would do it in concert with allies only. They didn't, for some reason, they totally avoided the ladies. They didn't seem to get anything from Warren or Klobuchar on that question. So I don't know. Trade. They talked about China, Mexico, Canada. They say aren't modest improvements better than no improvements with regards to Trump's New Deal, the USMCA. And Sanders says no. We could do much better than a Trump-led trade deal. And I've been against NAFTA, against permanent normal trade relations with China. And they asked, but Mr. Sanders, to be clear, the AFL-CIO supports this deal. Are you unwilling to compromise? This was the first of many questions that I noticed that was wildly, Bernie Sanders, why are you such an extremist? Shouldn't you be more moderate? Yeah. I mean, as far as we can tell, what's that guy's name? Trumpka? The
Trumpka?
AFL-CIO. Yeah. It's not Donald Trump. It's like his name is like Trumpka, Mike Trumpka or something. He's the head of the AFL-CIO, as far as I know.
Let me look.
I think
Richard L. Trumpka.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. He's the head of the AFL-CIO, right? Yeah. I mean, from what I understand, in the House, what's her name? Sicilian.
What?
The Sicilian leader of the House.
Leader of the House. Nancy Pelosi?
Yes, thank you. She is Sicilian.
Oh, okay.
Nancy Pelosi basically made him agree to sign it, as far as I understand. She said, from what I've heard, she would really put the pressure on this Trumpka guy. I don't know why this guy's name is Trumpka. I don't think we need that kind of confusion in today's world. But okay.
Are you saying he has to change?
I think it would be considerate. But yeah, so because the AFL-CIO agreed to support this deal under pressure, under duress, that shouldn't he be willing to compromise also? But I think Yeah, I think there's an argument, and a lot of people made the argument, oh, well, there's some moderate improvements, so that's why I voted for this one to approve this trade deal. It's like, yeah, but if you wait a year, you could get a better deal negotiated by Democrats, right?
Mm.
Like, this is why the Republicans didn't give anybody Merrick Garland in 2015, because they knew they wait a year, they can get a better deal for themselves, right? It's like, you don't take a moderately conservative justice now when you can get a totally maniacal conservative a year later, and you don't take a Trump trade deal right now and try to renegotiate it a year later after Mexico and Canada or China or whoever has agreed to this one. Now they're not going to renegotiate. They don't want to get a worse deal by renegotiating a year later, right? Like,
Right.
they've already
Well,
negotiated it.
yeah.
They're done with it.
Mm-hmm. Well, and just the
So
optics of it were bad too, because it was the same day they announced the impeachment. It
yeah,
totally
let's give
stepped on
Trump a
that
win.
news. Yeah,
Yeah,
and then
this
it was ridiculous. It was like with
this
a
this
1 day you're
guy's
supposed to
this guy's he's a threat to America, democracy, people all over the world. He's dangerous, but here we're going to give him this win on trade because it,
yeah.
it has some moderate
Yeah.
improvements over the status quo, and we don't really want to win in a year. I
And
mean, like,
Republicans
what's the
didn't give them.
logic there?
Yeah, the Republicans didn't give them any credit anyway for like being bipartisan about it. They were just like, well, why didn't you do it sooner?
Yeah,
They
you,
weren't like, oh, good, now we can all come to the table. It's like, no, sorry, you're still a loser even when you do it.
yeah. It's where is our Mitch McConnell? Like, where's
Mm,
our person, our leader who says you get nothing.
mm,
You can run the country for 4 years, but you get nothing from us.
right.
And good luck. That again, Democrats like to pat themselves on the back that they're better than that and that they're more concerned with the people, and so they want to govern for everybody. But this wishy-washy weakness, this is why the House always wins when you gamble at the casino, right? The House, what is it? They always stay at 16 or whatever, right?
Hmm.
Humans can choose to go above that or not, right? But like, the
Hmm.
House always stays at 16. Am I remembering that right?
You're talking about blackjack.
Yeah, yeah.
Hmm. Yeah,
It's like
they don't hit
the
on 16. Yeah, I think so.
yeah, and the stability of that is what gives them some sort of a numerical advantage. I may be like talking out of my ass here, but like, that's from what I understand. It's that consistency. But it's like, when you sometimes hit sometimes, but then sometimes you don't, that's when you start missing the ones you should hit and hitting the ones you should miss, and it introduces a variable into the
Hmm.
equation there, which results in more losses, I guess, statistically.
Hmm.
So again, I just wish we had a stronger leader who was like, no,
Hmm.
this this
The
clown
exact thing is
criminal
like,
president gets nothing.
sorry, I said the blackjack thing wrong. The dealer in casino blackjack always has to hit below 16 or 17 to based on the casino. So it has to
Okay.
stay when the cards are higher. So not that that matters in
Okay.
the
Yeah.
larger
Yeah. Yeah.
scheme of things, but anyway, go on. So
Yeah. Anyways, I don't know. It may not be a perfect metaphor, but I think that's like, this was the worst time to give Trump any kind of a deal,
yeah. Mhm.
and to the degree, yeah, and to the degree that if we win in a year, you can get a better deal. It's just I don't understand it. I'd like to hear somebody explain it to me in a way that I could understand, but
Mhm.
in a way that's not that, like, we've got 4 or 5 conservative Democrats in purple states, and they need to have something on their record so they don't get their asses thrown out next year.
Mhm.
Like, I don't know, whatever. Anyways, we're on page 2 out of 11, Bob, so we got to keep
Oh
this
boy.
train rolling.
Right.
So let's see. Let's see. Then one of the moderators said, we're going to get to climate change, but we'd like to stay on trade. And Bernie Sanders says, well, they are the same on this issue. Because I guess he was talking about the climate issues with regards to the trade deal. And then they asked the question to Senator Warren, you support the USMCA. Why is Senator Sanders wrong?
Mhm.
So they were gunning to get these guys fighting the entire night.
Yeah.
And Warren said, let's get workers' relief, and then we can renegotiate later, which I think is a miscalculation, right? It's like, you know, when was NAFTA done? That was like the mid 90s. We haven't had a renegotiation until now. You know, that's like what, 25 years or something, right? We're not going to do another renegotiation next year if we just approve the deal this year. If history is anything to go off of, right? So, and Bernie Sanders, I think, correctly points out it's not so easy to put together new trade legislation. If this is passed, I think it will set us back a number of years, which I think is, it's correct. Let's see. Amy Klobuchar says, Brianne, I want to hit reality here. Okay. I serve on the Agriculture Committee, and I will never forget going to Crawfordsville here in Iowa. And thank you for bringing up Iowa, Brianne, since that is where we are. And I went to this plant, and there was one worker left in that plant. That plant had been shut down because of Donald Trump's trade policies and because of what he had done to those workers with giving secret somethings to oil companies and ruining renewable fuel standards. That worker brought out a coat rack of uniforms, and he said, "These are my friends. They don't work here anymore." And their names were embroidered on those uniforms: Derek, Mark, Salvador. And that guy started to cry. So this, you'll have to drop her audio in there. It was a really strange and bizarre and kind of disjointed answer, I thought. I don't know. I'd like to fact check and see if those names on those uniforms actually were Derek, Mark, and Salvador. But
yeah, it's one of those things you can't check in the moment for sure. So
yeah. But she supports the USMCA, of course, because she's a moderate. Okay. Pete Buttigieg, I support the USMCA. I remember the betrayal of NAFTA. Joe Biden said, I don't know if there's any trade deal that the senator would think made any sense, but Korean. So he's like saying, Bernie Sanders is unreasonable. He's never going to agree to any trade deal. And Bernie Sanders responded, we lost 4 million jobs from NAFTA and permanent normalized trade relations with China. And then Biden responded, and I wrote it down, but then I marked it out. I was like, I think this is, the back and forth. We have to let it go. Warren said something. Buttigieg said something else. Steyer said, climate's my number one priority. And he seemed to go after Pete Buttigieg as a member of his children's generation for not making climate change a higher priority, which was interesting, I thought. And there was a little back and forth there, but it kind of didn't really turn into a moment, though.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, all right, Bob. Put on a diaper here because this is where we get to the big moment of the evening. Okay.
All right. Okay. Hold on. Give me 1 minute. I got to prepare for this. I got to do something real quick.
Bob, don't really get a diaper.
What? Oh, I'm not supposed to.
Don't actually grab a diaper.
Don't tell me that because I have diapers in the house. So
okay, it's a figure of speech.
I got multiple sizes. Different people wear different sizes. All right. We'll be
there
right
you
back.
go. We all have different needs.
1 second. All right. Diaper has been affixed. Go ahead. Kidding.
I've got an image of Donald Trump in my mind now.
Oh boy.
We see him depicted so often wearing a diaper.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So Senator Warren accused Sanders of saying in December of 2018 that a woman couldn't win the election. And the moderator, Abby Phillips, brings this question to Sanders, and Bernie Sanders says, well, as a matter of fact, I didn't say it. And I don't want to waste a lot of time on this because this is what Donald Trump and maybe some of the media want. Anybody knows me knows that it is incomprehensible that I would think that a woman could not be president of the United States. Go to YouTube today. There's some video of me 30 years ago talking about how a woman could become president of the United States. In 2015, I deferred, in fact, to Senator Warren. There was a movement to draft Senator Warren to run for president. And you know what? I said, stay back. Senator Warren decided not to run, and I did. I did run afterwards. Hillary Clinton won the popular vote by 3 million votes. How could anybody in a million years not believe that a woman could become president of the United States? Let me be very clear. If any of the women on this stage or any of the men on this stage win the nomination, and I hope that that's not the case, I hope it's me, but if they do, I will do everything in my power to make sure that they are elected in order to defeat the most dangerous president in the history of our country. And so she says, Senator Sanders, I do want to be clear. You're saying that you never told Senator Warren that a woman could not win the election? Correct. Senator Warren, what did you think when Senator Sanders told you a woman couldn't not win the election? Okay. So, and at this point, there's audible laughter from the crowd. Bernie Sanders is shaking his head in exasperation, incredulously. And Warren says, I disagreed. So she doesn't challenge the wording. Mm-hmm. Well, I guess, of course, she doesn't challenge the wording of the question. Bernie is my friend. I don't know. This is, this is one of those senatorial games that they play where they, you stick a knife in
my friend from the other side, aka the person I hate with every fiber of my body.
Yeah, it's like that. Bob, you got to drop that quote in from season 5 of The Wire, where they're giving a eulogy for one politician or something. The other one is, and he said, he was a great guy. I really enjoyed working with him or something. And Gus, the newspaperman, says, he feared and hated me, and I merely wanted to see him dead, or something like that. It's kind of like this clean language that everybody's a friend in the Senate, right? Even when they're twisting the knife. So,
yep.
So I disagreed. Bernie is my friend, and I am not here to try and fight with Bernie. He's a friend. He's a friend, but he's a little bit sexist, is what I'm saying, I guess, right? Okay, so I disagreed. Bernie is my friend, and I am not here to try to fight with Bernie. I don't want to fight with Bernie. Sorry, I can't even complete this without paraphrasing. I don't want to fight with Bernie. I just want to call him a sexist and let that kind of percolate in the national consciousness for a little bit. But I don't want to fight him. Unbelievable. Okay, I'm not here to try to fight with Bernie. But look, this discussion about whether or not a woman can be president has been raised. I love the language there. Okay, it has been raised.
Passive
by
voice.
Whom?
Passive
It's
voice.
been raised by you, Elizabeth Warren, in your campaign. Nobody else was talking about this. So but the issue has been raised, and it's time for us to attack it head on. I raised the issue, and now I'm going to attack the issue that I raised. Okay. Sorry, you'll have to drop the audio in here because I can't get through this thing without a million whatevers. And I think the best way to talk about who can win is by looking at people's record. So can a woman beat Donald Trump? Look at the men on this stage. Collectively, they have lost 10 elections. There's laughter from the audience at this point. The only people on this stage who have won every single election that they've been in are the women. And then there's cheering from the audience. Amy and me. And the only person on this stage who has beaten an incumbent Republican anytime in the past 30 years is me. And here's what I know. The real danger that we face as Democrats is picking a candidate who can't pull our party together, or someone who takes for granted big parts of the Democratic constituency. We need a candidate who can excite all parts of the Democratic Party, bring everyone in, and give everyone a Democrat to believe in. That's my plan, and that is why I'm going to win. And there's applause. And then, a normal debate moderator at this point would say, okay, you've invoked Bernie's name in your response, and you've, thrown him under the bus, and now we're going to go back to Bernie and give him a chance to respond to what you just said. But that's not what Abby Phillip does. She goes, Senator Klobuchar? And Senator Klobuchar is still basking in the rah go girl womanhood of it all. And thank you, Elizabeth. She says, Senator Klobuchar, what do you say to Senator Klobuchar? Let me finish my question, because Senator Klobuchar is already trying to jump in. She's already got her answer queued up and ready to go. What do you say to people who say that a woman can't win this election? Okay, so again, we're responding to people who say this. So far, the only person we've established who said it is Elizabeth Warren. We haven't even established that Bernie Sanders actually said it. But what do you say to people who say that a woman can't win this election? And Amy Klobuchar gets her thing in here. I hear that. People have said it. That's why I've addressed it from this stage. I point out that you don't have to be the best person in the room, the tallest person in the room. James Madison was 5'4", which is okay. This is a weird thing. This is a really okay. Bob, I'm sorry. I can't talk like a normal person at this point. This is a weird thing that I noticed in the previous debate. In basically in her opening statement, she already mentioned that James Madison was 5'4". She mentioned that in the PBS debate, and she mentions that here in the CNN debate. So this is another one of those dumb little facts that she memorized. Is Amy Klobuchar really short?
I don't
Like,
know.
I haven't noticed that, but is she like really short? Because she always mentions that there was a short person in American history. James Madison. Okay, so he was 5'4". She mentions it again. Okay, so I hear that. People have said it. That's why I've addressed it from this stage. I point out that you don't have to be the tallest person in the room. James Madison was 5'4". You don't have to be the skinniest person in the room, and you don't have to be the loudest person. You have to be competent. Okay, so now Amy Klobuchar is going to demonstrate competence for us. And when you look at the facts, Michigan has a woman governor right now, and she beat a Republican, Gretchen Whitmer. Okay, I'm not sure if Gretchen Whitmer is the representative from the governor of Michigan or if that's the Republican that she beat. But okay. Kansas has a woman governor right now, and she beat Chris Kobach. And her name is, I'm very proud to know her, and her name is Governor Kelly. Thank you. Third, I would add to this, you have to be a competent to win, and you have to know what you're doing. And when you look at what I have done, I have won every race, every place, every time. I have won in the reddest of districts. I have won in urban areas and the rural areas. I've brought people with me. That is why I have the most endorsements of current Iowa legislators, former Iowa legislators in this race. And then at some point she finishes up. But and then they say, Senator Sanders, you can respond. And Sanders says, well, just to set the record straight, I defeated an incumbent Republican running for Congress. And Elizabeth Warren chimes in there, interrupts him. When was that? When? And Bernie's like, he's been interrupted. And he's kind of like flustered. He's like, 1990. And Elizabeth Warren is visibly doing the math in her head. And Sanders continues, that's how I won. I beat a Republican congressman. The audience kind of laughs at this awkwardness. Number two, of course, he's continuing, and Warren says, 30 years ago. She interrupts him again. And Sanders says, I don't think there's any debate up here. And Warren says again, wasn't that 30 years ago? And they both pause. They're both like, her to, like, I think check the math again, him just out of sheer exasperation with her or something. He says, I beat an incumbent Republican congressman. And she said, and I said, I was the only one who's beaten an incumbent Republican in 30 years. And Sanders says, well, 30 years ago is 1990, as a matter of fact. But I don't know that that's the major issue of the day. I think the major issue of the day is, and then he says, whatever else he says. And then finally, Abby Phillips says, Senator Warren, I want to give you the final word. And Elizabeth Warren says something else. And that was it. So,
all right.
wow.
So couple of notes. All right. So Amy Klobuchar is 5'8", but she is also the shortest Democratic candidate on stage.
Yeah, she's 5'8", but she identifies as 5'4", right?
Sure. Yeah. Well, she feels like, yeah, exactly.
James Hamilton is her spirit animal.
James Madison.
James. Okay. Yeah.
But
Alexander Hamilton. I'm
right.
confused.
So to the point about the dust up, okay, so you're right. CNN's framing of the questions was ridiculous. They didn't do a good job of asking the questions, and they didn't do a good job of the order of the questions. Okay, so I give Bernie Sanders all the credit for his answers. The one thing I would say, and I know why he couldn't say it because it wouldn't be politic to say it, is I think he didn't own this idea that a woman couldn't be president. And I'm not saying they can't, but I think people of good faith can disagree on whether or not even if they think it should happen, a woman could be elected given the amount of misogyny that our patriarchal system, whatever you want to say. So I don't think that is a completely illegitimate debate. I don't think even if he said the thing that he's accused of saying, he was saying a woman shouldn't be president. I don't
Yeah.
think that was the thing that he was even being accused of saying. I know he denies saying the thing that was said, but even if he had owned it, I don't think that's. I think they're conflating should and could, and I think that's
Yeah.
a little bit disingenuous because obviously, like you said, they're trying to paint him as a misogynist, and I have doubts, and I'm not somebody who wants to see only men be president, but I have doubts whether or not this country is ready for that. Obviously people had the same debate before Barack Obama was elected if a black
Yeah.
man could be
We elect
elected,
one
or
black man, like
yeah,
they go full fucking fascist. What are they going to do if we actually elect a woman? Right?
right, or a gay
Like,
person, or you
yeah,
know what I
just
mean?
nuke
Like
the world.
yeah, right.
Yeah.
It's
What's the next step?
it's not an insane thing to say or an maybe people don't want to hear even that questioned at this point, but
Yeah. And
we live where we live. This is the country we have to deal with, and I'm sorry, it's not an easy glide path to power if you're anything but a straight white man. It's just not.
yeah.
It's difficult, and that doesn't mean you have to think that it's okay or you like the status quo, but you can just say, look, I have doubts.
Yeah.
That's a reasonable thing for people to say.
Yeah.
So,
I think, like, I mean, it's this is the problem, I think, with a lot of the kind of the overly woke kind of politics on the left is, you're put in the position of simultaneously believing that, like, for example, that race is a construct that doesn't exist, and yet race is the primary determining factor in who should have a voice in debates about race or something. It's like, well, this person's of this minority, and so their words have more power or something. Like, you're kind of like, and I'm pretty sure that I've even had the conversation with my mom before. We were talking about 2016 at some point, and she's like, this country is so sexist, and that's why we couldn't have Hillary Clinton in 2016, and I think that's why we need to support Elizabeth Warren in 2020. I'm like, Mom, if you're saying this is a sexist country that can't vote for a woman in 2016, why in the world would you run another woman in 2020 if you're just saying she can't win? And I'm not advocating one side or the other of that. I'm saying, like, it's logically inconsistent within your own worldview. If that's what you believe, then you'd be crazy to run another woman right now. So I think, like, non-sexist people on the left wing can have honest debates about whether or not a woman can win in 2020. I think they can. I think anybody could beat Donald Trump, possibly. I think, like, there's a chance that this thing is just such an overwhelming blowout that it seems obvious from, retrospectively to look back and say, well, of course he was obviously going to be beaten by anybody. But I don't know. I think, like, there's absolutists on the left wing who said Bernie Sanders never said anything of the sort. I guarantee it. I'm 100% sure. We weren't there. We don't know. But what I do know is that the way that Elizabeth Warren has tried to float this thing without saying what he actually said and without clarifying what any of the context around what he said is extremely disingenuous. I guarantee that. And frankly, I think it's in concert with I think it's part of a concerted effort, with Hillary coming out a few days ago. And
all right, let's get into it. All right, so Hillary Clinton is in a documentary that is on Netflix, I believe, about her a kind of retrospect of the 2016 election. I haven't seen this yet. I don't even know if it's out. But she said, do you have the quote?
Unfortunately, I don't have the quote. You'll have to drop it in here, maybe. But
I don't know if it was
audio or not. But
like,
yes, I'm sorry. I don't have that one up right off the hand. But we're gonna edit this in post, right, Bob?
Of course.
We always say we will. We never do.
Yeah. Right. I read it earlier, so I can paraphrase. So basically, she said, no one likes him. He doesn't work with anybody. He only works with one senator. I don't know if she ever said who the one senator was that worked with him. Yeah. So it was basically like just disparaging him. And then she said that she hadn't decided whether or not she would support him if he won the nomination in the general election.
Yeah.
And then she walked that back later, but it's...
Yeah, and she said something like she was really, what can we say? What's the word? She was really, not vindicative, but what can I say? Kind of like really coy about walking it back. Even she says, "Oh, what's the problem? I thought all the Bernie people wanted me to speak like my truth or just say what I
Nobody
really
wants you to
think."
speak
And
at all. Nobody wants you to talk, Hillary. Go in the woods again.
it's not even that. Like, we would have appreciated your, unvarnished opinion on things. I don't know, more in
Before,
2016, I
yeah,
think, rather
right,
than
right, right,
now.
right, right.
And
Now,
like,
now,
and not about your fellow Democrats, more about the
no,
Republicans.
yes.
It's like, and not trying to, I don't know, whatever. Um, but the thing is that when she did that, and then when I saw the stuff happening in the Daily Beast, so like, oh my God. I did a lot of homework for this podcast, Bob, and now I'm wishing I'd done even more because I wish I'd looked up the 3 articles that I saw over the past couple of days in the Daily Beast, which Chelsea Clinton actually sits on the board of the company that owns the Daily Beast, and so I'm
Wow.
not a conspiracist. I'm not a conspiracist here. I'm not a conspiracy theorist or whatever. I don't try to suck my own cock like Steve Bannon. Okay, but
Call back.
yeah, the
All
mooch.
right. Sorry, I have the exact quote. All right.
Okay.
Going back to Hillary. He was in Congress for years. He had one senator support him. Nobody likes him. Nobody wants to work with him. He got nothing done. He was a career politician. It's all just baloney, and I feel so bad people got sucked into it.
Yeah. Let me in the 1990s when Hillary Clinton was trying to do her healthcare thing, and thank you for that, Hillary. That was a noble effort.
Mm,
Bernie Sanders was in there advocating for it and supporting it, right?
mm,
And you thanked him then.
mm,
And at the debate in 2016, when you were debating Bernie, and Bernie says, frankly, we're sick and tired of hearing about your damn emails. You were laughing and clapping and cheering and saying,
mhm,
thank you, Bernie,
mhm,
right? And
mhm,
when Bernie went to how many did he do? 49. How many rallies did he do for Hillary after she beat him in the 2016 thing? You know, all this. I mean, they're trying to do right now. They're trying to run with this. They know that the Bernie bro was something that took off a little bit after 2016. That Bernie's a sexist, or people who support Bernie are sexist. But what I'm looking at, I'm trying to look at this as unbiasedly as I can.
mhm.
I'm looking at Bernie Sanders treating the women in politics very, very well, and the women turning around and stabbing him in the back and saying, "See, he's not nice to women." Like
Mhm.
Bernie Sanders bent over backwards, to do good things for Hillary Clinton in
Mhm.
2016 after she, had finally nailed the coffin on his campaign with, with things like Donna Brazile, passing her debate questions before the debate. She lied, cheated, and stole her way into that election. But once she
Mm.
got it, he did more than most people thought that he should have done
I'm
to
looking at
see her.
just a couple headlines from 2016, October 8th, 2016, Wall Street Journal. Bernie PAC schedule with campaign stops for Hillary Clinton. This is from November 4th, 2016, and the New Yorker. Bernie Sanders' hard fight for Hillary Clinton. Yeah, go on and on. But yeah, I don't get this thing about how he didn't tell people to support her. He definitely did. Like I was
Yeah,
there. I remember. I was alive and I was paying attention in 2016. He definitely campaigned for Hillary Clinton even after all the shenanigans happened with the DNC and all that. So
yeah. And and I could see how a certain type of Democrat listening to this podcast would say, gosh, Big Daddy Cha-Cha, you're so animated by this. Why is this animating you so much? It's like, look, I was a quote unquote Bernie bro in 2016, but I voted for Hillary. When the chips were down, I sat there, I stared at the ballot for an hour, but I fucking wrote her name down and I voted for her. So everybody else can shut the fuck up. I'm sorry to say, like, I did my part. I'm looking at my bookshelf right now. I've got Hillary Clinton's Living History hardcover on the shelf here. I,
mm,
you know, I'm not the sexist you're looking for or whatever,
yeah,
but
he didn't even wait for the paperback. People, come on, cut him some slack.
I think I bought it at a used place years
you're,
later or
you're
something.
undercutting your
But
argument, child. Let him think you bought it new.
no,
Come
no,
on.
yeah, yeah. Day one, I was in line. She might have autographed it for me.
I don't know
You're
if it
you're
was her.
right,
It
Bob.
looked like her. I couldn't tell.
Yeah, yeah. We took a selfie. No, but 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 I'm saying, like, Bernie Sanders did more for her, arguably, than she did for Barack Obama in
Mm,
2008 when he beat her. They had the Pumas, the Party Unity, my ass people that did not vote for Barack Obama and in fact voted for John McCain in numbers that the Bernie Bros did not defect in 2016. So,
well, as Rick Wilson pointed out when he appeared on the Rob Burgess Show, he's the one that came up with the Jeremiah Wright ads. That information came from the Clinton campaign originally.
Yeah. As well as the Barack Obama in traditional Kenyan dress, which she floated to make him look like a Muslim, right?
Oh, no doubt.
I mean, like, she's not some innocent babe in the woods here, okay? So.
And she had to know that this would happen when she made these comments too. I don't believe for a second that she didn't anticipate this kind of blowback.
No. This is when I became aware, I think, that what Elizabeth Warren had done was not an isolated incident, and whether Elizabeth Warren was there. I've heard theories out there that she's angling for a vice presidential bid with Joe Biden by handicapping Bernie right now, because I think it's pretty hard to see her being Bernie's vice presidential pick after this thing, right?
Goodness.
So, I mean, I don't know.
But she can read polls too. I think she knows just as well as anybody that his supporters are her supporters and her supporters are his supporters, and one goes up, the other goes down. I think they know that. So
I think that's true to some degree, although I think it's bizarre. But I think that the fact that I cited earlier that Bernie's supporters' second choice is Biden and Warren's second choice is like Buttigieg or something. It's bizarre, but I think she knows that they're in the same lane. But again, coming back to the fact that Bernie Sanders is very good to these women, but then they turn around and betray him and call it sexism. Like, as he mentioned, in 2015 he was part of the draft Warren thing, and when she didn't do it, he jumped in. Because he didn't want to steal votes from her if she was going to get in, and he wanted to support her if she was going to get in. She didn't get in, and when it came time to support the person who had deferred to her so much, she didn't do that. She endorsed Hillary Clinton, who did not have much in common with her ideologically compared to Bernie. So riddle me that. And and then a couple months ago, when the big story in the news everywhere was that Elizabeth Warren was jumping up and she was maybe in first place, and Biden was falling back and Elizabeth Warren was jumping up. Did Bernie hit her with a negative news story? Did he try to kneecap her in the debates? No, they were still fighting back to back on that stage. He did not do anything to slow her roll, nothing like that. But now, when she drops back down and then it's Buttigieg and then it's Biden again and now it's Bernie's turn, she's like, oh, wow, yeah, we're getting close to Super Tuesday. This is the last chance, and I've got to, I don't know what the logic even is, but it's like she turns around and tries to kneecap him when he's having his moment. And I think it backfired on her. I think she realizes that now. And I think she's trying to tell her supporters to not play up this fight, but it's like, it's kind of too late. That genie's out of the bag or whatever.
Whatever. I know what you mean.
Kind of mixing metaphors, but I mean, in each case, you can look at it as a sexism issue or something because it involves a man and a woman in each case. But like, you really got to look at like, what did Bernie do to them and what have they done to him? Like, he never did nothing to nobody. And they're like stabbing him in the back, left and right, and screaming about sexism. It's bullshit. So, and then, getting Amy Klobuchar in on the action too, for this kind of like, I don't know. It's disgusting. So, okay, but I had some more notes on this because, Elizabeth Warren got all pedantic about 30 years. I'm the only Democrat in the last 30 years to unseat a Republican incumbent, right? Well, and look at the women on the stage. Look at the men on the stage. The men between them, they've lost 10 elections, but the women have never lost anything. Okay, so this is where I went deep because I had questions about this. Because I know Elizabeth Warren's only been in the Senate since 2012? Okay, so she's had 2 elections. And God bless, she won both of them. Good for her, right?
Mm-hmm.
Amy Klobuchar joined the Hennepin County Attorney. She was the Hennepin County Attorney between 1998 and 2002, which I think would be 2 elections.
Mm-hmm.
And she joined the United States Senate in 2006 and had re-elections in 2012 and 2018, and she won all of them. And God bless, good for her, right?
Mm.
So the women on the stage had seven elections. They won 7 elections. Good. Now we go to the men on the stage. Number 1, Steyer. I don't think he's run for anything, so he hasn't won anything. He hasn't lost anything. So 0. Pete Buttigieg, in 2010, he ran to be the treasurer of Indiana, but he lost.
Yeah, ran against Richard Murdoch, the legitimate rape guy that eventually lost to Joe Donnelly.
Well, we're really time of the flat circle, Bob.
Absolutely, Kyle comes back around.
Yeah. In 2011, he ran for South Bend mayor, and he won. In 2017, he was in the runnings for the Democratic National Committee chair, but he withdrew. I guess it looked like he was going to lose, so I guess that counts as a loss. But in 2018, he was reelected. And during his time as South Bend mayor, he also did a tour in Afghanistan, I believe. It was while he was the mayor or something. So anyways, Pete Buttigieg has 2 wins and 2 losses. Okay. Joe Biden. Okay, Joe Biden, obviously, now we're getting into longer histories here. Between 1970 and 1972, he served as the Newcastle City Council member. So I think that would be, I don't know, I think that might be 1 or 2 wins. I'm not sure. Between 1973 and 2009, he served in the Senate, where he won 6 re-elections as senator. In 1987 and 2008, he had 2 failed presidential bids, so that was 2 losses, right? So Joe Biden had 7 or 8 wins and 2 losses, depending on how you count the Newcastle City Council member thing, whether that was 1 or 2 elections. So Biden, out of 9 or 10 elections, he lost twice. Going back to 1973, and now Bernie Sanders. Let's see, Bernie. From 1981 to 1989, he was the mayor of Burlington, Vermont. From 1991 to 2007, he was a member of the House of Representatives, and from 2007 to 2020, now he's been a senator. Okay. In the 1970s, he ran for office 4 times on the Liberty Union Party ticket. Okay. And I think he lost those 4. And that was before he became the mayor. Let's see. I took meticulous notes here. So in the 1970s, he had 4 losses. In the 1980s, he had 4 wins and 2 losses when he ran for higher office as an independent twice in the 1980s. But from then on, in 1990, he won. In November 6, 1990, he defeated incumbent Peter Plimpton Smith, Republican, to become the Vermont's U.S. representative. Okay, that was on. Okay, so now that was on November 6, 1990, and I'm gonna definitively do the math for Elizabeth Warren here. Okay, because she was sitting there trying to figure out whether 2020 to 1990, that's 30 years, right? It's been 30 years. You haven't defeated an incumbent for 30 years. She's saying this on January 14th, 2020. Bernie Sanders actually defeated this guy on November 6, 1990, which is late 1990. Elizabeth Warren's talking early 2020. So actually, if you want to be technical about it, it's closer to 29 years since he defeated an incumbent. It wasn't actually 30 years. 30 years would have been if it was all the way in November 2020, but it's not. Yeah, it's January.
30's a nice round number, though, Joe.
Yeah. Even by her pedantic bullshit math, she's wrong. She's like, it's very cute to say, oh, I'm the only one here who's defeated an incumbent Republican in the last 30 years. Like 30 years is just such a random number. It's such a pedantic thing to do. And then to get into a back and forth where you're interrupting Bernie and stuff, trying to tell him, no, it's 30 years, right? Wrong, Elizabeth. Actually, it's 29. It's closer to 29.
Was that a sneak dig at Pete, too, because you can get 30 in there instead of saying 20-something and remind him that he's in his 30s?
Yeah, probably so. That's probably what it was. And Bernie didn't take office until 1991. But anyways, so yeah. So he lost 4 times in the 1970s, which is really kind of at the very beginning of his political career.
Yeah.
He lost 2 higher runs in the 1980s when he was already serving as the mayor, and he didn't lose his mayorship, so he was still serving as the mayor that whole time. But by my calculation, he won. He won in 1990. He won again in 1992, 1996, 2000, 2004, 2006, 2012, and 2018. So by my calculation, Bernie has had 6 or 7 losses. If you and I even I gave her one more. I gave her one more loss, which was the 2016 presidential campaign, which he lost. Because if we're going to count Joe Biden's losses of presidential election, then I guess we can count Bernie's too. So I would say Bernie lost 6 times, but he won 11 times, going back to the 1970s. Okay. Mm-hmm. So by my calculation, of the 4 men on stage and the 2 women on stage, the 4 men, 3 of them have run for election before, and of that, they've won 20 out of 30 times that they've run. The 2 women on stage have won 7 out of 7 times. But my point is, when Elizabeth Warren and Amy Klobuchar have been in office for as long as these guys have, and they've tried to assume as many different, they may say, okay, we're senators now, we don't have to go any higher than that except for president. But I guarantee you, after 2019, one of them at least is going to have a loss on her record, and probably both of them. Right. So this is the last year that Elizabeth Warren can trot out that stat that she's never lost anything in her whole life. And
right. Well, I think another thing we have to remember is that Bernie did all that while, do a 2016 presidential election aside, while being an independent or a third party candidate. So
yeah,
not a bad record for somebody not a bad record for somebody who's running outside the political mainstream. Usually that's a 0, it's an O and whatever the number of election is record, but he's managed to do way better than almost any other third party or independent candidate that I'm aware of. So
yeah. When Elizabeth Warren has won, 17 for 17 or 18 for 18 of her elections, running for different positions, not just holding the same incumbent spot the whole time, then she can talk about it. And the other thing is, Bernie Sanders and Joe Biden were back there losing elections, and back when Elizabeth Warren was a Republican. So yeah. Good for you, Elizabeth Warren. You decided at some point in 1998 to become a Democrat. And then, years later, over 14 years later, you decided to run for election office, and you haven't lost since then. These guys have been in the trenches for, 40 years, something like that, 50 years almost, right? Like running for things. So, it's cute. It's very cute to, and I think she had a line in the PBS debate where they're like, Elizabeth Warren, you would be the oldest person to be running for president or something if you were inaugurated or something. And she's like, yes, but I'd be the youngest woman. Okay, that's cute. But it's really avoiding the question of, how old is too old, and maybe it's not a fair question, but it's like, it's too cute by half, I would say, right? Like, it's like this kind of thing like, oh, well, I'm the only one to defeat an incumbent in the last 30 years. Yeah. Oh, you defeated an incumbent, but that was like 29.8 years ago, not 30. But it's just too cute. It's too cute by half. And like, oh, me and the women on stage, we've won all of our elections, but these guys are losers. Yeah, they've been doing this about 4 times as long as you have. Yeah, they've lost a couple in those times, and you're about to lose one too this year. So have some humility or something. Jesus.
Right. Well, I mean, it's like you can't. It's like she couldn't say that without putting them down in the offing, and that was upsetting. So.
Yeah. So. Yeah. Anyways, that was my whole tangent about a couple of her arguments there about the women winning all their elections, and about and about the 30 year thing where she tried to ding Bernie on the 30 years thing. It's exasperating. It's a little political word game that, frankly, I think is below someone like Bernie Sanders, and frankly, I don't know. Well, I think like Joe or Pete Buttigieg is really good with words, but I still think, he does play these games a little bit sometimes too. kind of differentiating himself. But
Mm-hmm.
anyways, it was totally exasperating. I spent a lot more time than I should have, like on Ballotpedia and Wikipedia, just getting all these things, getting all these facts backed up and everything.
Uh-huh.
But that's the full story on that.
Right.
Okay. And I'm not sure how much competition Amy Klobuchar had for the Hennepin County attorney position in 1998 to 2002, but
I'm not
whatever.
sure.
We'll let it go.
I'm not even sure the people in Hennepin County know at this point.
Yeah. Okay. So that was most of the thing between Bernie and Warren.
Yeah.
Then Joe Biden said, I agree, women can win. And I went in and campaigned for them, 27 of them this last 2018. The best group I've ever campaigned for, the competence. But the real issue is who can bring the whole party together and jump, et cetera. Like, but again, Joe Biden has got this kind of like this, sexist uncle kind of thing going on where he's like, yeah, the women won, but it was because I helped them, right?
Yeah.
I campaigned for them. It's like, you didn't build that until Elizabeth Warren two debates ago. Where he's like,
you did a good job.
I got you those votes. I got you those votes in the Senate. You did a really good job with your job.
Thank you.
Like everybody's trying to call Bernie Sanders a sexist when like Joe Biden is just, whatever.
Yeah, I see, and I noticed this about Bernie Sanders as kind of a meta comment, and they're always like, "Are you gonna pay for that, Bernie?" And they're always hitting him with these things. It's like, I think he gets it worse because it does seem genuine, and they're like always trying to find these little points where they can get around him, to be not genuine. But it would, like Trump says, like, oh, we're gonna give you health care, it's gonna be beautiful, better than anything. No one's like, how are you going to pay for that? How's that going to work? Because they know he's like full of it. They know he's never going to come through. He doesn't even know what he's talking about. But it's like Bernie's like trying to make this happen, and he's trying to be good faith about it. But then they're always like nitpicking because they actually believe that he's going to, I think his that's where his authenticity comes back onto him, because then people are trying to nitpick every detail because they know he's serious about it, and somebody who's just bluster gets to say whatever they want and nobody challenges on them
to some degree. Although I would say to that, I think Bernie tends to say exactly, he'll give you a direct answer like, how are you going to pay for it? Well, we're going to raise taxes on the millionaires and the billionaires and the, and this, and then this, and this is where the lack of direct authenticity for Elizabeth Warren came in. Like when a couple debates ago, when Buttigieg was coming after her, like she's not saying how she's going to pay for it and stuff. And they're like, well, at least Bernie's going to tell us that he's going to raise our taxes. Like she won't say it. So they kept trying to come back to her and trying to get her to say she was going to raise taxes. And I said at the time, like, I don't particularly blame her for avoiding that. Bernie Sanders, he's a glutton for punishment. He's just going to say, yeah, we're going to raise your taxes. And, he'll take the beating that comes with that. Not every politician necessarily has the constitution where they want to put themselves in that position. I don't blame her for that. But again, I think that's a point where that bluntness and that directness and that willingness to say it is actually beneficial for him.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah. And, finally, at the end, I mean, do you want to do it at the end or do you want to do it right now with the no handshake?
Talk about it right now. It's fine. Go ahead.
Okay, so at the end of the debate, well, originally when we watched the debate, we saw Bernie Sanders approach Elizabeth Warren, hand out extended for a handshake, and she wouldn't take it. And then he threw his two hands up too, and then they backed away from each other, looking pretty frustrated and stuff. We did for a couple days there. We didn't really know what had happened, but it didn't look good. And then CNN, miraculously found the audio. They had some backup mics hooked up, and I'm sure Bob can drop the audio in here. But Elizabeth Warren. Well, I tell you what. Hold on one second, Bob. Here, edit this part. Hold on. I'm gonna try something 3D in real time. Hold on one second. Okay, Bob. What I just did is I took a photo of my written down section of the dialogue here that went on between them, and we can actually act this out for our audience here, because I sent it to you on Facebook, okay?
Okay,
so
hold on a sec.
Do you want to be Warren or do you want to be Sanders? And we can kind of we can rock, paper, scissors for Stayer. However you want to do it.
All right, I'm loading it now. Hold on a sec. I can be Warren. That's fine.
Okay.
Seem very comfortable speaking for Bernie there, Cha. No, I'm kidding.
I don't know. We could do it. We should do it both ways, and we'll just see who can get the voices better each time. Okay, so you're gonna be Warren.
If only we had some women here to read the women part. All right.
Conscript Ash.
Yeah, she's in the shower. All right. So all right. So all right. No handshake. It says. All right. And Warren, I think you called me a liar on national TV.
What?
I think you called me a liar on national TV.
Let's not do it right now. You want to have that discussion? We'll have that discussion.
Anytime.
You called me a liar. You told me. All right. Let's not do it right now.
I don't want to get in the middle of it. I just want to say, hi, Bernie.
Yeah. Good. Okay.
It's like, not now, time stare.
Yeah. All right. I think that was pretty good. Okay. Let's try it. Let's try it the other way.
Okay. You start.
This is content gold for our audience here.
I know, this is what they wait for.
Bob, it's Oscar seasons right now, isn't it?
I think we're outside
Golden
the window
Globes or
of
something.
consideration. Yeah, but go.
Maybe we'll be in consideration
next year. Yeah.
I think you called me a liar on national TV.
What?
I think you called me a liar on national TV.
Let's not do this right now. You can have that discussion. We'll have that discussion.
Anytime.
You called me a liar. You told me. All right, let's not do it right now.
I don't want to get in the middle of it. I just want to say, hey, Bernie.
Yeah, good. Okay.
All right. Okay. All right. So, yeah. Now, there's been a lot of, conspiracy theories flung about as far as, was this, what can we say? Did Elizabeth Warren plan this? Did CNN intentionally set up the microphones to catch this moment? Did she, provoke him after the debate to get this thing? I don't know. I don't know if I don't really know if I go in for all that. I think she was probably just pissed off at him for some reason for something he said during the debate. And maybe she honestly believes he said what she thinks he said, or that he meant what she is implying that he meant by it. And so she's just, honestly, righteously indignant that he's denying it now and not allowing himself to be smeared as a sexist. And so she's had her blood boiling for the last hour and a half or whatever that the debate was going on, that, she just couldn't wait to confront him and challenge him on this. And so I can understand that. But at the same time, she has to know that, you're still on stage. People are going to see when you don't shake hands with this guy. And you said, Bernie Sanders is my friend. I don't want to come up here and fight with Bernie. Then you shake the motherfucker's hand. Okay. That's what you do.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know.
Right. I mean, I think you're still on the debate stage, still mic'd up. I think you got to know that.
Now,
yeah.
Yes, you're mic'd up, but I would not say that she should have necessarily expected the audio to be released later, because that's never happened to my knowledge. I don't know that we've ever had in history, we've ever had a situation where, people were hot mic'd at the end of the debate, what they were saying after they were all shaking hands and getting off stage. So that part's unprecedented, but just
Bernie Sanders seemed to have the good sense not to talk about it there. I think he at least knew what was up. So I don't think it was totally inconceivable. He at least knew that this was a possibility of getting out.
Yeah. I just want to know what she's thinking. Sometimes I wonder, I wonder, on the woke left, sometimes I feel like there's this idea that you can call people racist or sexist and that they're not supposed to be upset about that. Or that you can say somebody has white privilege, even whether they feel like they've had any privilege in their life or not, and they have to accept it and, and kind of prostrate themselves wait, that's not right, is it?
No, I think you got it.
I was worried I said prostate.
I heard prostrate, but.
Good. Okay. Because that'd be really uncomfortable if I said the other word.
It also, women don't have a prostate though, so still kind
of. Yeah, but I don't know. What does she think? The implication here is that Bernie Sanders is a sexist because he said this. That's the only possible implication anybody could take away from this. Mm-hmm. She knows that's what she's saying about him. What does she think how did she think he should take that? Honestly, how should he accept that? Right. Why should he accept that? Why should he, frankly, you're lucky he's coming up to even shake your hand. My God, if anybody should be avoiding a handshake, it might be him. but he has the good sense that the optics of this are, such as they are.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. I know we don't always have, we don't have really names of these episodes or something, but I was thinking the subtitle of this episode could be the I don't know, the centrist Democrats strike back or something, kind of like that, or,
Star Wars.
Yeah. Or, the mainstream Democrats try to rat fuck Bernie, which is a word that I don't like to say that or whatever on the podcast, but it's like a word that just kept popping up into my head the way that they've been going after the guy.
Mm-hmm.
And
yeah,
so,
notice this is all happening just days before the Iowa caucuses. You know what I mean? Where polls are showing him pulling away. It's like, could this not have come out? You know what I mean? This Hillary Clinton statement, this dust up with Elizabeth Warren. We didn't even get to it, but the thing about Joe Rogan endorsing Bernie and that blowing up. It's like all this stuff is happening now. Why do you think? Of course, it's because it's right before the first votes are about to be taken.
Yeah.
So.
And the thing that I just can't believe. I mean, there's two questions. There's two possibilities for Elizabeth Warren. Number one, she's I don't know what the word is, naive or something, or she's just not she has to know this is not going to redound to her benefit. This is going to redound to Joe Biden's benefit, if anybody's. So, number one, if she actually believes in all the stuff that she and Bernie Sanders supposedly share, then she should be happy that either he or she is the front runner. But that's never the case.
Right.
When Bernie Sanders is running against Hillary Clinton, she sides with Hillary Clinton. When Bernie Sanders is finally pulling ahead of Joe Biden after she took the lead and fell back behind, she wants to fuck Bernie Sanders so that he falls back out of the lead again and Joe Biden can reclaim it before the first incredibly important election.
Yeah. Well, the other thing is too is I respected both of them actually for having this non-aggression pact where they didn't go at each other and they had their shared ideals and they were going to fight for those ideals over which one of us. But now that it's getting close to the votes, it's she's getting squirrely about it and he's still on his. I believe that he would have kept on his non-aggression pact, but for this, because
I know he would have, because when she took the lead, he didn't try to screw that up for her a month or two ago, right? When she took the lead over Joe Biden and she was having her moment, he wasn't leaking stories through his staff about her, about how, she did this or she did that. He didn't try to do anything. He has never not tried to advance Elizabeth Warren's career. And even when that's for the presidency, which he also has some desire for. He has never not tried to advance her career. And 2 times in a row now. The 2016 thing, a lot of Bernie bros were like, fuck Elizabeth Warren, she screwed him over, she betrayed Bernie Sanders and stuff. And I'm like, okay, maybe the writing was already on the wall with the Clinton thing. I was ready to, move past that. But now for her to do this again in 2019, in 2020,
there's another line of attack against Bernie voters that I think is totally ridiculous, where it's but see, there's such a big percentage of his voters that won't vote for anybody but Bernie. I'm like, okay, that proves 2 things, all right? Proves one thing, that the Democratic Party as a whole is completely out of touch with its base, and he's the only one speaking to their interests. Secondly, it's maybe he is able to reach out to people that the Democratic Party had no chance of getting but for him. It doesn't speak to him trying to put a wedge between
and I think it's
the
both
party
and
its base. Exactly.
I think it's both and.
So that line of attack makes no sense to me, and it's if you just stick with the people who already agree with you, you're not going to win this election. You have to reach out to people who might not be as woke or as, what I mean, they agree on these issues that he's putting forward, and he's trying to get people coalesced around a big idea, and it's going to include people that Democrats haven't been able to penetrate before. Isn't that a plus? Why are you making that into a negative? So
yeah, I'm always trying to get people I haven't been able to penetrate before.
Cut.
Sorry, Bob. Leave it in or edit it out. I don't know.
This is a family program, Chef. Family program.
This is going to rat fuck my future presidential candidacy.
Oh boy.
So,
Last
but
episode of the Rob Burgess Show.
yep. So yeah, no, I agree. I think like that's the difficult thing is like, okay, like I've got a friend over here in Korea, and he's a good guy. He's a good Bernie guy and stuff. We talk about it and stuff. And his dad was also a big Bernie guy in 2016, but now like his dad seems kind of like he's more on the, well, his dad can't stand, Hillary Clinton for some reason and stuff, which, and his dad's also I think his dad actually voted for Trump in 2016. He was going to vote for Bernie, but he voted for Trump. Okay. And now he wants to vote for Bernie, but he also he'd rather vote for Tulsi Gabbard. Okay. Now that's very frustrating. I'd love to interview the man, just kind of get to the bottom of that all.
Exactly.
But the thing is, this is a Trump voter, and love him or hate him or agree with him on other issues or not, he would have voted for Bernie, and he probably still would. So don't blame Democratic Bernie bros, quote unquote, for their behavior, when what you're also talking about is a section of the Democratic, or not even the Democratic electorate, but the electorate that would vote for Bernie, or they would vote for Donald Trump, but they're not going to vote for a mainstream politician. And so don't blame all Bernie bros for those people. Those people are out of the wheelhouse, but Bernie gets them for some reason. Okay. So don't look a gift horse in the mouth. Take it.
Right.
We can get those votes. We can peel off those votes. Take it.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I, I'll say one thing for Trump supporters. I get why they're mad. Like, I don't understand why they picked him. I think he is a ridiculous con man and should have been evident from the beginning. But I get why they're fed up with the system. The system is rigged, as he said. But obviously, he wasn't the person I think they should have gone towards. But Bernie is appealing to those people. He is saying the same things on that issue that Trump is. Now, of course, there's many differences, like the fact that one's an insane fascist and the other's not. But you know what I mean? It's like, they're both identifying the same problem or the same deficiency that the Democratic Party. They've left themselves open to this. They've totally turned their back on their traditional base, organized labor, all this stuff. They've turned their back. They've supported these free trade agreements that have sent all these jobs overseas. They've go down the line. You know what I mean?
And by the way, Bob, it's hilarious to watch these people who did vote for stuff like NAFTA and who did fuck over organized labor to now be saying to Bernie Sanders in 2019, 2020, oh, we can't have universal, Medicaid for all, Medicare for all, because what about the poor unions who gave up increased wages to get medical benefits instead? Now, these people who fucked organized labor are on the side of organized labor against Bernie Sanders. It's, unbelievable.
Yeah.
So, yeah, there's a lot to say there. Definitely.
All right. Well, let's move on with the debate because we gotta keep moving. So.
All right, Bob. All right. Progressives. We're always going towards the future. Okay.
That's right. We're never always forward, never back.
Yeah. Always up, never down. Yep. And always spiraling towards freedom. How does that Kong or whatever from The Simpsons?
Oh yeah.
if you can drop that audio in here, that'd be awesome, Bob.
Disney owns that. I'm not touching that.
Maybe if you make it like chopped and screwed or something. It's risky. We must go forward, not backward, upward, not downward, and always spiraling towards something. I forget. Okay. All right, moving on. Oh God.
We must move forward, not backward, upward, not forward, and always twirling towards freedom.
Yeah.
That's such a great episode. I love that.
Yeah.
Miniature American flags for some, abortions for others.
Yeah, there were some great lines. Definitely great lines. Yeah. All right. Well, Bob. Okay, we're on page 6. Okay, so wow. A lot of pages were consumed by that.
Yep.
And I'm happy to say page 12 is now gone because we did that one first. So, all right. So we're on page 6 out of 11 here. We're moving steadily. All right. Healthcare was our next topic. And there was a lot to say about healthcare. There were some interesting things in here, I would say. All right. And this is another one of these questions. Mr. Sanders, don't you owe it to voters to tell them how much Medicare for all will cost? And Bernie Sanders says something like, Medicare for all is cheaper than the status quo. And then she turns, and this is Abby Phillip. She turns to Biden and says, Mr. Biden, doesn't Mr. Sanders owe the voters an explanation? And he says, I think we have to be candid with voters. And he's advocating Obamacare with a buy-in. Klobuchar, I don't agree with Bernie's position on health care. This debate isn't real. I was in Vegas the other day, and someone said, don't put your chips on a number on the wheel that isn't even on the wheel.
Nobody said that.
That's the problem.
Nobody said that.
And then she seems to imply that other Democrats don't support it, like governors or conservative Democrats don't support Medicare for all. Then she says, I have a plan for that. So she's stealing Elizabeth Warren's line.
I noticed that.
Yeah. My own dad, I know when his long-term care insurance ends, and then we have savings for him. We have some savings for him. He's in assisted living. He got married 3 times. Whole nother story. So there isn't much there. But then we go to Medicaid, and I have already, and at this point, the moderator's like, thank you. I have already talked to Catholic Elder Care. They are willing to take him in. Our story is better than so many other families. Thank you, Senator. What in the world was this? Like, what was she on about? Like, something about Vegas, something about don't put your chips somewhere, and then something, I have a plan for that, and then my dad, talking about my own dad, my dad has this situation, and blah, 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 blah. Okay. Whatever. My mom is like leaning towards Klobuchar, and I'm like,
why?
Oh no, Mom, no.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know. It's exasperating. Okay, so that was that. Moving along, then Warren says, reduce the cost of prescription drugs, defend the Affordable Care Act. I've got a plan to expand health care. We're all better than Trump on health care on this stage. Okay, so this seems to be kind of like a rear guard defense or something due to the fact that she's walked back things on Medicare for all and said that, she wasn't going to do it all the first year. It might be the third year before she gets to it or something. But then, she's able to say, well, everybody on stage, we're all kind of like the same. We're all better than, Trump at least. So, don't criticize me too much for not going as far as Bernie on health care. And defend the ACA, defend the Affordable Care Act. So again, it's more about trying to perpetuate the Affordable Care Act rather than going to Medicare for all right.
Mm-hmm.
So,
yeah.
Biden says Obamacare expanded with the Biden option. Interesting, which sounds like some
branded.
Yeah. So he talked about like a couple of things like, negotiating prescription drug prices, just some little, buzzwords around the edges, things that you say you want to do them now, but maybe, 2 or 3 years later, you can't really get around to them, or there's some pushback from the Republicans and it doesn't really get done, but you won the campaign. So I don't know. I don't believe that Biden is serious about fighting for any of those things.
No.
Stayer said, we've had this conversation too many times, which is also something I agree with. I'm sick of them rehashing the healthcare stuff every single debate when people don't change that much, except for Elizabeth Warren.
Mm-hmm.
But then Stayer said, I agree with Biden, which is kind of like, okay, Stayer, you've been getting me a lot here up until this point. I don't know about that though.
Mm-hmm.
Then there was another question from Abby Williams. Abby Phillip. She said, hold on one second, I'm dropping my papers. She said, Senator Sanders, your campaign proposals would double federal spending over the next decade, an unprecedented level of spending not seen since World War I. How would you keep your plans from bankrupting the country? Jesus. Whoa. You're at an 11. I need you to take it down to about a 6. Okay. It's like, yeah. Whoa. Like, I want to check this Abby Phillips person's like Facebook and just see how much attack she's getting from Bernie bros, quote unquote, and consider how many more attacks she actually should be getting than what she probably actually is. Like consistently, repeatedly throughout this thing, she launched the conversations by, there was a line. There's a line in Bob. I wish our show had more like audio drop-ins from like shows and stuff. There's a line from Mad Men. I forget which season. I don't know the episode, and I don't remember the context. He said, I have a question, and there's no other way to phrase it than as an accusation, or it's something like that. Yeah, I'm going to ask you a question, and there's no other way to phrase it than as an accusation. And I think that was kind of her philosophy when it came to, approaching Bernie Sanders at any point in the debate. So Bernie Sanders just restated the benefits of the Medicare for all. Amy Klobuchar says, if you want to be practical and progressive at the same time and have a plan and not a pipe dream, you have to show that how you're going to pay for it. And yes, I think you should show how you're going to pay for things. Bernie, I do. This president is treating people out there like poker chips in one of his bankrupt casinos. We're back to the poker thing, her recent Vegas trip or whatever. The way he's adding to the debt. I'm the one person with a plan to start taking on the deficit, taking part of that money from that corporate tax cut and putting it in a fund to pay back the deficit. Oh, boy. Thank you, Amy Klobuchar. This will truly inspire the Democratic electorate. Let's start figuring out how we're going to repay the deficit, how we're going to, cut the deficit, repay the debt.
Yeah.
That's what we should do after 4 years of Trump, rat fucking the country's economy by giving these massive, spending for everything and then paying for nothing with taxes. Let's be the Democratic Party again that comes back in and saves the country's ass by, cutting spending and raising taxes and being, we're going to make the American people eat their vegetables again.
Yeah. I see. The problem is I can't criticize Amy Klobuchar without sounding like a sexist, but I can't. I don't like listening to her talk. She makes me insane. She always
Bob.
has. She has.
Careful.
I know.
We're on thin ice right now.
She has this cadence where she's always leading towards something. Like you think she's going to make some big, rousing speech, but it always just fizzles out into nothing. Like it's always like she stumbles over her words, or she forgets what she was going to say, or she mixes her metaphors with these casino things. It's like the wheel on the wheel and the point and the person's name, I can't remember it, and then it's like, just stop. Like this is why you're the centrist, because you don't believe in anything. You just believe in the status quo. You just want to get people over that you think are in the middle of the country, but you're totally not excited. Yeah, I don't know. She just drives me crazy.
Yeah, we're from the middle of the country, and we are not impressed.
Absolutely. And guess what? Republicans from where we're from aren't impressed either. They're not. Yeah. You're not going to suddenly be like, oh gosh, this Amy Klobuchar, she's making sense.
Yeah. So and I, at first when she was talking about this, I'm the one person with a plan to start taking on the debt. Taking part of that money from the corporate tax cut and putting it in a fund to pay back the deficit. I had at this point, I just about put my head through the wall because I was trying to figure out what she was saying. I was like, what money from the corporate tax cut? There's no money from the corporate tax cut because we didn't tax them. They got the money. So what are you talking about? We're going to take the money from the corporate tax cut and pay back the deficit. And then I thought about it for a while and I'm like, oh, okay. So she means we're not going to give them, we're going to rescind the corporate tax cut, right? I think this is what she means, is that we're not going to do the corporate tax cut anymore. Although she didn't say she's going to raise taxes on anybody, which seems to be the implication. But I guess, and I'm being way too generous because I'm having to do double black flips of logic to figure out what she was actually trying to say, which is that we're going to raise taxes on corporations and then we're going to take that money, not give, Medicare for all to the people, not give free college to everybody in America, nothing like that. No, we're going to pay down the deficit that the Republicans have run up for the past 4 years. Fuck you, Amy Klobuchar. No, thank you. No, thank you. Right? Not interested. Sorry, you can edit part of that if you want. But it's like I was having to, it wasn't clear what she was saying at first. I was trying to figure out what money from the tax cuts. There's no money there. The government doesn't have that money. And then I realized, oh, she means she's going to raise the taxes on these companies. She's such a centrist. She can't even say she's going to raise taxes on companies. Not even talking about the middle class or the upper class or the, the 1% of the 1% of the 99% or whatever. She can't even go in one of those things. She won't even say that she's going to raise taxes on companies. That's how much of a centrist she is. So Yeah. I mean, I'm glad or whatever that she was able to win her, 5 elections back wherever she is from and stuff, Hennepin County, whatever. But I think she's in for a rude awakening on the national stage that, her brand of like down home kind of like, oh shucks, mom's going to make you eat your vegetables thing is not going to play very well nationwide. Like it's just not.
Mm-hmm.
So, okay. Then they come to Pete Buttigieg and he said the Affordable Care Act depends on no free riders. So everyone has to be enrolled in something. So whether that's their existing health insurance or, or they have to be on the government thing or something, everybody has to be involved, this is something we've talked about before. We've criticized him because he's saying, Medicare for all who want it. And we were trying to say like, well, that might not even fund Medicare for all then, because if not everybody gets on it and then they try to get on it when they're sick and da 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 da. But I guess his position is a little bit more nuanced than that. He's saying everybody has to be on something. So you have to have, if you don't have private health insurance, you're automatically put on the government health insurance. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And you have to pay into it. Okay. So it's more complicated, but again, still, I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
Elizabeth Warren, I think, correctly points out you can't cover the kinds of out-of-pocket expenses that Buttigieg claims his plan will for what he claims it'll cost. I think he was talking about like 1 trillion versus like 10 or 20 trillion for Sanders and Warren or something. Again, you get into these big numbers, my brain glasses over. It's not something, I can conceptualize very well, but I take Warren at her word here over Buttigieg that, he's probably trying to hew to the middle a little bit too much and have it both ways. So, Klobuchar attacks Warren's plan. She said, you would kick 149 million Americans off their current healthcare plans. Yeah, the private healthcare is going away. Klobuchar, deal with it. You make it sound like an apocalyptic Republican nightmare, but,
Yeah.
you're disingenuous. She says, it is a big, big step to say people making $100,000 a year that your premiums will be cut in half, which is what the nonprofit public option will do. And at this point, again, I just about put my head through a wall. I'm like, what does this even mean? Are you saying that $100,000 a year is a lot? A little? What are you trying to say here? Okay, let me read that again. It is a big, big step to say to people making $100,000 a year that your premiums will be cut in half, which is what the nonprofit public option will do.
Wait, is she for the nonprofit public option?
I don't know. This is like, yeah, like I don't know what this even means, and I could begin to understand this sentence if I knew that she's saying that people who make $100,000 a year are upper class or lower class. If that part were clear to me, then I could understand the rest of it perhaps a little bit better. Because where I'm from, $100,000 a year is,
nice.
upper middle class at least.
Oh yeah.
I mean, but I got the sense that she's thinking like $100,000 a year is lower class or lower middle class. I got the, again, I think it's, I haven't gone to Amy Klobuchar's website, so maybe that's my fault that I don't know what she's talking about, but I think it's a failure of her ability to communicate, again, on 2 issues in a row here, that I don't know. I can't make heads or tails of that statement. I mean, maybe we should do some homework and try to figure it out, but like, I mean, I don't care. She's not going to be the president, but like, what was that? What does it mean?
Yeah.
What are you trying to say? It's a big step.
Know. Yeah.
Premiums will be cut in half. Okay, I guess that's a good thing. But if I were making $100,000 a year, I wouldn't much care about premiums. I could afford it, for most things, barring like cancer or AIDS, I guess.
Right.
I don't know. I'm not a senior citizen. I don't have, recurring monthly bills for like, a million medications, jobless, knock on wood and everything. But if I'm making $100,000 a year, my lifestyle looks a lot different than it does right now. So that's all I'm going to say. So again, inscrutable, absolutely inscrutable.
Right.
Okay, Bob, we are coming in on the home stretch here. Okay.
All right.
Page 8. Okay, so there's another Sanders attack question from Abby Phillip. Although I will say this one I think was actually somewhat fair. Okay, so she said, Senator Sanders, coming to you now. CNN reached out to Iowa Democratic voters for their most pressing questions. And Edward from here in Des Moines writes, Des Moines is an insurance town. What happens to all the insurance industry, the health insurance industry here if there is Medicare for all? What happens to all the jobs and the livelihoods of the people that live in insurance towns like Des Moines? Now, I think that's a fair question just because I'm curious about that because, as a Democrat, they're going to have to create jobs. They're going to have to keep unemployment down. And it is true that if we're talking about getting rid of an entire industry, the private insurance industry, that's going to put a lot of people across the nation out of work. And that's that. So I think that's a fair question, actually. Like that's, what do they do? Now I'm going to have some other responses to that. I think that's a little bit like asking like, hey, the leeches that you just pulled off of your body, they still need blood now. So how are you going to provide them blood now that they're no longer drinking your blood, right?
But Chuck, you know what Andrew Yang would say if he was there, right?
Yeah. UBI bitches, we're going to give you all $1,000 a month. Don't even worry about it. We got you covered.
Yep.
It's so simple. It's amazing that nobody thought of it before.
I know, right?
Yeah. So, yeah, maybe, I don't know, maybe Sanders will take Yang as his vice president and that'll be the solution. But that's not the answer that Sanders gave. Sanders said a transition fund of many billions of dollars that will provide for up to 5 years income and health insurance or health care and job training to those people. But then okay. I feel like job retraining programs are one of the, bullshit political promises that never actually works out, ever in politics for people or whatever. Like people who lose a job in the factory somewhere don't get retrained and become like, programming geniuses or something 2 years later. I've never seen it happen in my life, but politicians often talk about it. So I don't know. But like I said, I do think it's a little bit like asking like these leeches that have been sucking the blood off the body politic forever. How are they going to get their blood now that we're changing the system? It's like, well, that's a sad story, but we have to get the leeches off our body. Right. But so Sanders continues and he said, but we're spending twice as much, sometimes 10 times as much as other countries. Why is that? And the answer is the greed and corruption of the drug and insurance companies. So, and I think that is some good context there. I think like I wish, maybe I wish there was an answer that that it included more than just, 5 years of, support and healthcare and job training programs for these people in the insurance industry. But it's like, but at the end of the day, their industry is causing us to pay 2 times as much or 10 times as much for our healthcare as other countries. And that's unsustainable. It's unjustifiable. So, what do they have to do? I don't know. Gosh, I hope they can find something to do, but it's not really, I don't know. It is the president's problem. It would be the president's problem in this situation. And he does have to have an answer and he has an answer. So I don't know. It was an interesting question.
Yeah, I thought that was interesting.
And at some point in this question, he mentioned Tom Stayer's, something Tom Steyer had said before, which was interesting because then Tom Steyer raised his hand as though he'd been attacked by Bernie. And he said, can I respond to this? And so, and Abby Phillip, of course, allows it because she thinks maybe Stayer's going to jump on Sanders or something. And he says, I just want to emphasize what Senator Sanders is saying. Senator Warren is right. This is cruelty for money. And so he strongly actually supported Sanders and Warren on this. And then they kind of wrapped up his talking time. But let's see. Joe Biden said, I would argue that the greatest breakthrough in recent times was us being able to do what 5 Democratic presidents couldn't get done, and that is pass Obamacare. I'm thinking, yeah, 5 other Democratic presidents couldn't pass Obamacare because they weren't named Obama. But, I'm, it's kind of pedantic response, I guess. But also it's like, why are you calling it Obamacare? Like usually like Obamacare was the derisive name the Republicans gave to it. It should be the Affordable Care Act, right? But then I'm like, oh yeah, you're Joe Biden. You're trying to link yourself to the name Obama every single time you can, even if it means like calling it the Obamacare instead of the Affordable Care Act, which is usually what the people who push through legislation would want to do, is call it by its proper name.
Yeah. Yes, he
Right?
can, Joe. Yes, he
Yes,
can.
he can. I suppose so. Let's see. Then Biden said, we can control drug prices, where if they increase the price higher than what we say it can be, then people can import from abroad, assuming it is safe, which again strikes me as a non-answer. It's like, oh yeah, we'll tell the pharmaceutical industry like how much they can charge for the drugs, and then if they charge more, we'll say that American citizens can get their drugs from overseas if those drugs are safe. But again, then you get into the whole thing of the regulatory agencies are controlled by the industry and stuff. And so the pharmaceutical industry is going to like pay billions of dollars for the regulators to say, no, Canadian drugs and Mexican drugs are not safe for American citizens. It's not the same thing as what we're selling. Can't import it, right? And also, how would it be imported? Are individuals going to be importing this stuff themselves, or are there going to be, organizations or companies or government agencies in charge of importing drugs from other countries? It's, I don't actually believe that Joe Biden is going to fight for Americans to be able to get non-American medicine brought in.
Joe Biden knows a guy who can get across the border, Joe.
I guess so. Yeah, vote for Pedro. All of your greatest dreams will come true.
That's right.
Okay, Warren says a government drug manufacturer. There should be a government drug manufacturer for when there are shortages or price hikes. Interesting idea. It's a way to make market works. It's a way to make a way to make markets work. No price controls. Let contracts. We're going to let contracts out, which is apparently something the government does for other work they need done by the private industry. For specific drugs, get competition out there. So this is another point where she's emphasizing that she's not a democratic socialist. She's a capitalist who wants to, create a government drug manufacturer to compete with the private industry to drive down prices, but essentially just to keep the market working in a way, which, okay, I think there's an argument to be made there. Yeah. Klobuchar says, I'm open to looking at that. Bernie and I got 14 Republican votes to bring in generic drugs. It was at midnight. They might not have known what they were voting for, but we did that. So,
what a great line of argument. I'm such a centrist that I can sneak things past when the Republicans aren't looking.
Yeah. Well, okay, Bob, we're on page 9. Okay, child care and free college. Buttigieg says 2/3 of income on child care is what people are spending now, but we need to get it down to 7% or lower for some people. Okay, all right. That's a lot on child care, and 7%, I don't know where he gets that number, but he sounds confident, and so I believe him.
It's a real problem. I mean, just seeing what these places charge for, it doesn't make, like what he's saying is so true. Like certain people are working so they can have kids be in child care when they could just stay home with the kids, and it would just be the net, you know what I mean? It would be the same thing, but at least you'd get to be home with your kids, So
yeah, I was wondering about that actually. I don't have kids, so I don't know. I'm not married and stuff, but like, I was wondering.
It's insane.
Yeah, no, I believe it's expensive, but it's interesting that they would be working just to make enough money just to pay for the childcare and have nothing left over. I'm thinking like they must have something left over, or else why would they be doing it?
No. Well, I mean, you don't want to lose your job. You don't want to like fall behind in your career. The idea, I believe, is that you want to do this for a couple of years, and then you would send them to, preschool and then school or whatever, and then you'd still get keep working, I guess. So it's not a forever thing, but for the time that you're paying for it, it's an arm and a leg. So
yeah, I think okay. Well, Bob has got that family demographic covered.
Oh yeah.
So that's you're bringing some perspective that I can't bring to it. So that's good. All right. So what Buttigieg was saying makes a little bit more sense. I can't imagine. Yeah. people, how much they pay for. So it's a matter of just keeping their career going. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And like my brother who lives in California, he's told me the prices for daycare there, and it's more than my rent. It's insane. So just for one, and that's per kid too. That's not, you don't get some kind of discount because you got the 3-pack or whatever. So.
Yeah. There must be, like, I mean, as Hillary Clinton said, it takes a village to raise a child, and
sometimes an unlicensed daycare these days.
I mean, if there was a way to guarantee quality, I don't know.
Other countries do it, as you pointed out. We're the only ones that don't. So I mean, there's a way to subsidize it or somehow do it, but it's whatever the system is now is not working. So.
Yeah. Well, it's an issue in Korea too. I mean, like, the birth rate is collapsing in Korea because the cost of raising children in Korea with education and childcare and everything is exorbitant. And so, most people are opting to have children later or not at all, or just to have like 1 or 2 max children and stuff. So it's an issue here too. But I would say, like, I mean, like, I don't know how much it costs, but it's like, in the bottom floor of some apartment buildings, there will be like a children's, like a Yuchiwan or a Odini Gongwan, which are like kind of like preschools or like, like kind of baby places or whatever. I don't know what you call those in English.
What?
Baby, like where you keep babies, not preschool, but like before that or whatever.
Daycare?
Yeah. Okay, like a daycare, probably like a Yuchiwan, I guess. So they have these things like in the basement floor or the first floor of some large high-rise apartment buildings and stuff. So theoretically, people in that neighborhood could send their kids there when they go to work or whatever, and they would just be taken care of all day. Now, again, I don't know how much that costs a family. I'm sure maybe someday I'll find out or whatever if I start relating to women better or something in my private life, get married or something. But we may want to edit that part out. But yeah, if I stop being a workaholic and start focusing on family at some point or something like that, go back to the gym, maybe do some sit-ups, whatever it takes. but yeah. So, but yeah, they're I'm just saying the facilities exist in Korea, but yeah, I don't know. It's a complicated world. It's expensive. Yeah. Okay. Warren said income limit on free childcare. Okay. So they said, like, well, Elizabeth Warren, you support free college for all. So why do you support an income limit on free childcare? And she gave some answer. I just thought it was an interesting thing to take note of, that was a point that she was making, a distinction she was making. Bernie Sanders says high quality, universal, affordable childcare. So again, he's not even advocating free childcare, so he may not be going as far as Warren. Not sure exactly.
Boo! Bring back Yang. I'm kidding.
yeah, $1,000 a month. You get a lot of childcare for $1,000 a month. Yeah.
What are these old white people talking about? Bring back Yang.
Yeah. Biden said he wants to give an $8,000 tax credit so women could go back to work. I'm like, what? This, again, tax credits are another bullshit thing, I think, that, an $8,000 tax credit. Maybe I don't understand this, but for a lot of people, you don't end up owing anything in taxes anyways, right? They tax you, they do it, they check your taxes, they collect some, and then they give you some back or whatever, or whatever, like if you make a certain amount. I don't know. It's like, what if they don't even take $8,000 out of your paycheck for a year? Like, you don't get $8,000 back because you got a tax credit for like more than you paid in taxes. And like, and I don't know, most poor people, I don't think they can pay $8,000 across the year with the knowledge that they're going to eventually get that $8,000 back after it gets taken out of their taxes at the end of the year, and then they get it back, and that balances out for them. That's not how normal poor people I know work their money. I think like, I think tax credits is another bullshit political talking point, similar to the job retraining programs, that sounds good. It's something people can talk about in politics, but it doesn't actually help most people.
It's because they get to say like taxes. People don't like taxes, so if you're giving them a credit on the taxes, that sounds good. And it's probably just one of those tested phrases that tests well with people or something. So
yeah, like I mean, Bob, would you and Ash pay for child care throughout the year if you knew you were going to get an $8,000 tax credit at the end of the year?
I don't even know
Does
what
that
that
make
means.
sense for you?
I don't know what that means. All I know is that as long next year's taxes are going to be so sweet because I get to claim 3 kids. So I'm already looking forward to that. Be
All
back
right,
in
well,
the
good
money
luck with
truck
that.
up.
Yeah. Just imagine if you're getting $1,000 a month for each of them.
Yeah, I don't know.
Wait, does Yang's thing, does it kick in for under 18 or was it only over 18?
It's 18 and over. I know, right?
Well, another 10 to 12 years or so, you guys are going to be rolling in the dough.
Yeah.
Or at least the captain will.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Well, let's see. Okay, let's keep going. Let's see. Okay, so Biden keeps talking about this, and I think this is one of those things that he's not very comfortable about because he says, $8,000 tax credit so women could go back to work. But Bernie's right. We have to raise the salaries of the people who are doing the care, and my plan provides for that. I'm like, wait a minute. Okay, you're trying to make it more affordable for people, but you're also trying to raise the salaries of the people who are providing it. That's a conflict of interest. You don't cut costs and cut costs. You don't cut costs and cut, salaries, right? Like one of them's got to go up and the other one's got to go down. And so then after that, he said, my time is up. I know, but I'm not going to go over like everybody else. Mm-hmm. My point is, I think Biden had about 2 talking points on childcare, and then he's like, I can't talk about this anymore.
Yeah, he always
I haven't really thought about it. I don't really have a plan for it.
Yeah, if he runs out of things to say, he's always, remembering his time.
Yeah, he's very magnanimous about his time when he's out of ideas, which I don't know. I don't totally blame him. Like it's hard to be motivated and passionate about every single issue under the sun, and to have but to candidates' credit, they do. I mean, some the good ones do.
I've also noticed his tell when he's spinning his wheels is here's the deal. The deal is, and that buys him like 3 seconds while he can say that before he can think of something else to say.
Yeah, studying these things, it gives you a real good idea of how to avoid actually answering a question, and number of things you can say that make you sound smart and like you're really wrestling with the issue without actually having to wrestle with the issue. Mm-hmm. Like there's a lot of things you can say. So.
Never answer the question you were asked, always answer the question you wish you were asked, as Robert McNamara in Fog of War said.
Yeah, so. What a good movie.
Yeah.
I still remember the day I saw that down there on, was it Walnut Street or where was that?
Yeah, I know what you're talking about. Mm-hmm.
Was that the Buskirk Chumley?
Must have been.
Independent Theater in Bloomington, Indiana.
Sure.
Okay. Buttigieg says free public college for the bottom 80% of incomes. He says, I know there's no scripture that says, as you've done unto the middle class, so you've done unto me. Which is kind of a funny line.
Yeah.
Warren says wealth tax. Let's see. Klobuchar says, I want to take a step back. I actually think that some of our colleagues who want free college for all aren't thinking big enough. Okay, this is another exasperating point with Amy Klobuchar.
Yeah, my ears perked up at that. I was like, whoa, Amy Klobuchar, what are you about to say?
Yeah. Well, you're going to go farther than Warren and Sanders?
All right,
I'm
listening. Against my better
pay
judgment.
us to go to college?
Right. Against my better judgment, Amy Klobuchar,
$15 minimum wage per credit hour? Like, exactly. What are you going to do here? Yeah, I want to take a step back. I actually think that some of our
$2,000 a month, Amy? $2,000?
Yeah. Can I get $3,000? How is she going to outdo these motherfuckers on free college when they don't go far enough? So she said, okay, I want to capture the insipidness of what she says. I want to take a step back. I actually think that some of our colleagues who want free college for all aren't thinking big enough. I think our money should go into 1 and 2 year degrees, like my dad and my sister got, like my dad got, like my sister got. I'm like, how? Okay, Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren with free college for all and free college for all at public universities aren't going far enough. So you're going to guarantee free college for 1 year, 1 to 2 years. So somebody can get like an associate's degree, and like she said, they could work as a healthcare provider, not a doctor, not a registered nurse or anything, but as a healthcare provider or a plumber or something like that. Which again, I know it's a popular thing. Like on Facebook, they just say like, oh, I didn't go to liberal arts college to get a major in like religious studies of feminine theory or something. I just put roofs on buildings and stuff, which is obviously it's a necessary thing, but it's like, I don't think that these two things have to be put in opposition to each other in such an aggressive way.
Yeah, they're not, and let's be real. It's not the same as it was when Amy Klobuchar's father, who I'm sure, the thrice divorced father who was born in like 1917 or whatever. I'm sure, I'm sure that back in his day that was enough. I'm sure that was. But as you and I know, even to get a minimal job, a college degree is the baseline. It's not high school anymore. It's college. You have to have that degree, and it's not really optional if you ever want any.
A lot of jobs, that can turn into careers, it's needed.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so, but I just like, I don't know. I think I need to like, the next time I talk to my mom, I just actually want to go through some of the things that Amy Klobuchar said, because I think one thing about my mom is that my mom doesn't have cable TV, so she can't see the debates on like CNN or something. Mm-hmm. So she sees the clips or something, but I don't think she actually knows what Amy Klobuchar wants or what she says and how it just doesn't, just doesn't add up. But
have you told her about eating the salad with the comb yet?
Yeah, we've talked about that. She's like, well, I'm sure she was just frustrated or something. It's like,
no.
I think, Mom, I've been frustrated. I think I put my hand through a few fans or something at times, but like, I didn't eat a salad with a fucking dirty comb. I don't know.
I've been down and out in my life, but I've never been that down.
Yeah, that's a sad story. Okay, so, but again, yeah, Amy Klobuchar just being Amy Klobuchar, I guess. I don't know. Stayer said, my kids didn't need free college, which, okay, again, he's coming down on the other side of the debate about what do you call it? About
giving free college.
God, I can hardly think anymore after all this. What do you call it when you offer something for some people but not for all people? Oh, means testing. He's coming down on the other side of the means testing argument, which is that, yeah, if you're a billionaire, your kids don't need free college, which, okay, fair enough. And, I know Bernie and Warren are, they can argue that the other way or whatever, but
well, whatever. Didn't Warren have something where it's like you're going to pay part of it or something too, if you're over a certain amount of time of something?
I'll be honest. I'm not sure where she landed on that finally. Either. I know she's pretty close to Bernie, but yeah.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think the argument in favor of not means testing it is that you then take away the weapon that people use to be like, oh, I'm paying for these. Why should I pay for these poor people? Because then everybody gets it, so you really can't say you're just paying for the. What I'm saying? It's like, maybe the billionaire's kid doesn't need it, but that kind of takes the weapon away from. And maybe you leave the option in there if they want to opt out and pay themselves, they can or whatever. But I don't think. I think bifurcating it like that creates that resentment between the classes or whatever that we see. It's like the people that complain about like food stamps, people buying like lobster on food stamps or something. It's like the same. It's like
I've never seen that.
Oh, it's ridiculous. You haven't visited a local news comment section lately, I guess.
I guess different news stories, I suppose, but yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So no, I hear that argument, but I think on the other hand, when you don't means test it, you just give it to everybody, then you're also giving a huge number, to them to beat you over the head with. This is costing $6 trillion a year, or whatever it is. Of course, you could argue that it's still going to be like maybe only $4 trillion if you take out the rich people or something, but it's still like, yeah. It's, whatever. I think Tom Steyer is not wrong on it. I think it's like, and Buttigieg also saying, bottom 80% of incomes, that's probably enough, I can take it either way there. So, all right, the acquittal of Trump. Let's see. Biden said something, notwithstanding that there's going to be more division after he's defeated by me. Something. I don't know. Klobuchar, if Senate Republicans won't even give Democrats the 4 witnesses we want in a Senate trial, they might as well give Trump a crown and a scepter. And then she mentions a man from Primgar, Iowa said, "At long last, sir, have you no decency?" in the McCarthy hearings and stuff. And so she name drops another person, somebody from Iowa who she can throw out there and stuff. And maybe we're supposed to be able to imagine her saying to Donald Trump, "At long last, sir, have you no decency?" Which we can't. We don't imagine that of her.
Also, I hate when politicians do this thing where they're like, if we don't do this, well, then this is going to happen. And then eventually, of course, that thing happens. And then they never mention it again. And then they say the next, well, if this next thing happens, you never know. It's like, all right, well, they're not going to give the witnesses. Spoiler alert. Lisa Murkowski, Susan Collins aren't going to do the right thing. A big shocker, So so you're saying we just have a king now? We have to live with that? That's what you were saying in that quote. If we don't do that, we have to say he's a king. But she's not going to say that again. She's going to be like, well, there's always next, you know what I mean? Like you make these apocalyptic statements and then never return to them when they actually come true. It's like we don't deal with climate change by 2015. It's like, well, we didn't deal with it by 2015. So do we just have fun for the rest of few years while we have the planet left and not even try? Or why are you making these like artificial things and you never mention them again? Because it like takes the oomph out of whatever. But that's not just Amy Klobuchar, but another thing.
Well, I think I saw a story today that let's see, Barack Obama, I don't know, he contacted one of the incoming, or he contacted he told somebody that Donald Trump was a fascist or something in the 2016 campaign.
It was Tim Kaine and
he told Tim Kaine. Yeah, I thought it was somebody in the Hillary orbit there.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, okay, yeah, thanks Obama 4 years later for telling us what you really thought at the time.
Yeah.
I don't know.
You could have said
that
out loud.
Good one way or the other.
Time. I don't know.
Yeah. Other people like myself were saying the same thing in 2015, but everybody's talking like we were crazy and alarmist.
Mm-hmm. Give the guy a chance.
Barack Obama agreed with us at the time.
Deserves a chance.
Who's your God now?
Give him 100 days or whatever. He'll grow into the office.
Yeah. You can't change the behaviors of sociopaths very easily.
No.
Yeah, that's what I always say about my ex-girlfriend. Just joking. That's apocryphal. Let's see. Tom Steyer said, standing up for what's right is always worth it. I think he was saying not a question of political expediency or whatever. Okay, sure. Warren said something, then it was climate crisis. Buttigieg said, in Australia, there are literally tornadoes made of fire taking place, which is not necessarily something I ever thought I would ever hear outside of kind of like a B movie from the 80s or something. But Tom Steyer said, what Buttigieg is talking about is managed retreat. I would declare a state of emergency on day one on climate, which I thought was, good. State of emergency, day one on climate. Good. Very good.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And if you use that state of emergency to throw certain Republicans in re-education camps, I ain't going to shed no tears. Okay, so you can do a lot of things under the expanded powers of a state of emergency. That's all
I know. I'm really excited to see what we can do with this expanded executive branch when we get back in power.
Mm-hmm.
Here. This is going to be lots of fun. I can't wait to see.
Tom Steyer, let's talk. Let's talk about what you're going to do. You may be able to get my support here. So, but yeah, I mean, thank God the guy's taking climate change deadly seriously. It sounds like, and he's, like you said, he's kind of taken that mantle from I'm blanking on his name before. It was in the
Jay Inslee, Washington governor.
Yeah, I'm glad somebody picked up that mantle and is running with it.
Or as the stranger called him, Climate Daddy.
Okay. Wow.
Because remember they had that poll about the most, hottest. Who would you like to?
The most
the
bangable candidates
Yeah,
or something.
Right.
Yeah. And that's an interesting and fascinating question.
Mm-hmm.
Apparently, like I remember Pete Buttigieg is remarkably popular with elderly, which is weird. I guess, he's kind of got that square, freshly shaven jaw and kind of a very serious boy mannerism to him, right? Like,
Right.
But he's gay. They need to remember that.
Yep. Absolutely.
Yeah. So I don't know how. Yeah. But I don't know. I've always said I think I think Tulsi Gabbard's got a certain appeal. I think she's fucking crazy, but I can see the appeal, there.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know, Bob. Who do you think? What do you think?
The most attractive candidate?
Yeah, I mean, like
Physically?
in a like not necessarily for you, but like just like for men or for women, you could see them kind of like being attracted towards somebody who's in the race or was in the race or whatever.
I think Pete's got it going on. I think as far as like if you're into that kind of what do we say, kind of overachieving, kind of button down type thing. Yeah, I think you could go for that. I mean, I'm not gay or anything, but I could see. if
Pete
I was,
Buttigieg is totally bangable. No homo.
Yeah. Yeah, right. Pause. As the hip hop people
Bob,
say nowadays.
This podcast is going to require extensive
so
edits.
much editing.
Extensive.
So much editing. And it's a shame too, because it's really one of our best at this point. we haven't gotten to the bangability of the candidates yet, like I'd like to. So I'm really glad we're getting to this at about the 2.5 hour mark. So.
Yeah. Wow. Well, once you've covered everything else, we covered their policies,
exactly.
We covered their history.
Let's get to the real. Yeah.
Now you need to uncover their body.
The meat market portion. Let's see what the goods are.
Yeah. It's it's an election is really just a popularity contest.
Absolutely.
And when you look good, it's real easy to be popular.
Anyway, how's those notes coming?
Slow jam the news. Okay. Okay. Let's see. Elizabeth Warren says, take back government from corruption. I think that's probably a good thing to, reduce, climate change and stuff. And then we get to our favorite whipping girl from this whole segment, Amy Klobuchar, who does not want to ban fracking. She has no ban on fracking.
Surprise.
But she says, I have 100% ranking from conservation groups. She says, I want more regulation on methane.
Have they heard this position? Amy Klobuchar.
Yeah, she says she wants more regulation on methane. So she wants to talk about methane, not fracking. Then she says, I actually see natural gas as a transition fuel. And at this point, Bernie Sanders is shaking his head. He's exasperated. And she says, where we can get to a carbon neutral. So natural gas is the transition fuel to get to carbon neutral. She says, nearly every one of us has a plan that is very similar. And that is to get to a carbon neutral. Okay, so this is, again, she's doing what Elizabeth Warren did earlier, where she's trying to say, like, she's got an unpopular position, but she's going to say, oh, nearly every one of us, we all pretty much kind of are on the same page, right, guys? I mean, we're all Democrats here, right? Like, she's like, so nearly every one of us has a plan that is very similar. And that is to get to carbon neutral by 2045, 2050, to get to by 2030 to a 45% reduction. And I want to add one thing, which is, and at this point she's been rambling for way too long, and like the moderator cut her off and went to Bernie Sanders and he says, thank you. He's clearly angry that they let Klobuchar ramble bullshit for so long. He says, let's be clear. If we as a nation do not transform our energy system away from fossil fuels, not by 2050, not by 2040, but unless we lead the world right now, not easy stuff, the planet we'll be leaving our kids will be uninhabitable and unhealthy. Green. And so he advocates a Green New Deal. I'm like, that's kind of funny that you would, it's uninhabitable and it's also unhealthy. It's like, I think uninhabitable includes unhealthy.
Mm-hmm.
I think merely unhealthy sounds preferable to totally uninhabitable, but otherwise I totally agree with what he's saying there. It's like, yeah, Amy Klobuchar is trying to do this thing where like, yeah, we're going to, it's always a path and we're always, progress always moves forward and we'll do better tomorrow than we did today, which is still better than yesterday. And maybe by 2050, we can start to, transition off of fossil fuels. And Bernie Sanders is like, are you crazy? Like Buttigieg was saying, we got tornadoes of fire in Australia and you're talking about 2050. There's not going to be a 2050,
Right.
Joe Biden talked about 550,000 charging stations along the highways of America to make green highways or something, create good paying jobs by building these things. Carbon neutral farmers absorbing carbon in their fields so that they're part of the solution and not being told that they're part of the problem anymore. And then he says, there's more to say, but I know. And then he just stops. So again, he ran out of things to say after he talked about the farmers and the charging stations. Okay. Final thing before final statements was unique challenges. They asked each candidate about a unique challenge that they would face as the candidate. And, at this point, I think Abby Phillip actually asked a good question of Buttigieg. She said, like, you've said that, African Americans just haven't gotten to know you yet, but you've been campaigning for over a year now. And maybe the fact is that African Americans do know you and they just don't like you or something. He's like, well, the black voters that know me best support me. And then he mentions a couple like local people in Iowa or in his home state of Indiana at his local level.
Some of my best friends are.
Yeah. It's a problem for him. He's not getting around it. She said, Bernie Sanders, you're a democratic socialist, and won't that hurt you? And he says, democratic socialism won't hurt me. Trump is socialism for big business, and da 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 da. And I'm like, I get a little frustrated with Bernie Sanders. Like, can you just be a democratic socialist but not say you're a democratic socialist? Are you really that attached to the name? I mean, we know they're going to beat you one way or the other with this epithet, whether you have it or not. But the fact that you self-apply it doesn't help. It's just like, I do kind of wish he would, modulate a little bit on that some more. I don't know. Maybe I'm a centrist hack. Tom Steyer, how can you convince the voters that you're more than just your money or something? And he's like, I'm more than my money. I'm self-made. I can beat Trump on the economy. Okay. And Amy Klobuchar, how can you inspire the voters with your talk of centrism or pragmatism? She's like, I can inspire voters with a message of pragmatism because the Midwest is not flyover country for me. I live here. I would say to Donald Trump, you treat people like poker chips, but for me, they are my friends and my neighbors. Like, again, with the poker chips for the third time.
Does she have a gambling problem maybe that we don't know about?
I don't know. Didn't she say that her dad was an alcoholic or something? Is that somebody else I'm thinking of?
I don't remember. Cut that out.
Yeah, maybe that's why he got divorced 3 times.
Oof.
Okay.
Boom. Boom.
Shots fired. Okay. All right. Elizabeth Warren said, will you scare away swing voters? She's like, I won't scare away swing voters because I's born and raised in Oklahoma. She said I's. Elizabeth Warren, I noticed at a previous point, she also like totally mispronounced a word in this way. She's trying to sound like kind of hoaxy and down home and phony and like folksy or whatever. She's like, I's born and raised in Oklahoma. I have, Bob, what does she have in Oklahoma?
Oh, 3 brothers.
She's got 3 older brothers. They're all
right.
retired, all back there still. And 2 of my 3 brothers are Republicans. And sure, there are a lot of things we disagree on, and we can do the Democrat and Republican talking points. But there's a whole lot we agree on. My brothers are just furious over Chevron and Eli Lilly and Amazon that are these giant corporations making billions of dollars in profits and paying nothing in taxes and da-da-da-da-da. It goes on and on. I'm sure that's the animating frustration of Republicans all across the world is, large companies making money. Joe Biden, she said something like, Biden, these Democratic debates are going to look like patty cake compared to debates with Donald Trump. Are you prepared to debate Trump? He says, I am prepared to debate Trump. I've been the subject of his affection now for more than anybody else on this stage. And says some other things. And finally, we come to closing statements, Bob, at long last. We made it.
Okay.
It's been a long journey here.
Yes.
All right, Amy Klobuchar. I have won every race, every place, every time, which is something she said before. If you are tired of the extremes in our politics and the noise and the nonsense, then you have a home with me. No, we're not, Klobuchar. We want more of the extremes. Get out of here. Okay. Tom Steyer talked about team sports. I used to play team sports. In team sports, the American people are my team. For the past 7 years, Trump has been running down the field, kicking my teammates in the face. 7 years? I'm like, come on, 4 or 5 maximum. What does he mean 7 years? Buttigieg says defeating Donald Trump is by such. Okay, Buttigieg is like, he's a good speaker. Like, he has some good. He's good at speaking in a way, very Obama-esque in a way, I would say. Says defeating Donald Trump by such a big margin that we send Trumpism to the dustbin of history. If you are watching this at home and you are exhausted by the spectacle of division and dysfunction, I'm asking you to join me. If you are seeing the president boast about the Dow Jones and wondering if any of that will ever get to your kitchen table, join me. If you're a voter of color feeling taken for granted by politics as usual, join me. If you're used to voting for the other party, but right now cannot look your kids in the eye and explain this president to them, join me. So that was he was kind of feeling himself there, going along pretty well. Elizabeth Warren says, we didn't talk about disabilities. She's like, while we were having this debate, I was taking notes about things that we didn't talk about. And we didn't talk about people with disabilities and gun violence and poverty, childhood poverty, trans women, particularly trans women of color, are at risk, Black infant mortality, climate change that particularly hits Black and brown communities, people being crushed by student loan debt, farmers barely holding on, people struggling with mental illness, etc. I'm like, okay. All right, Elizabeth Warren, you checked a lot of your woke boxes there, just so you got it on the record there for the debate. Okay. Sanders says, it's been a good debate, but we haven't asked a major question. How has it happened that people are living paycheck to paycheck? There's homelessness, immigration is being handled wrong, criminal justice reform, etc. Just he went into his whole, his spiel, his regularly scheduled thing. So, and then, Joe Biden says character is on the ballot, which I think is kind of like a recycled thing from, what was her name? California.
What's that?
Candidate from California, justice is on the ballot.
Kamala Harris.
How quickly they forget.
Right.
You drop out and 2 weeks later, nobody can remember your name.
Yeah, right.
But yeah, she used to say justice is on the ballot. Now Biden's closing argument is character is on the ballot. Okay. Vice presidential nod?
Maybe.
I don't know. Anyways, Bob, that concludes my notes.
Wow. Good work, Cha.
Yeah. You can kind of see why I didn't really want to fuck with the PBS one too much after I put in, after I'd gone through half of that, I was like, no, I can't start over. Not now.
You should still watch it, though. There was some other interesting stuff, but it wasn't nearly as consequential as this one, I thought, at least in terms of newsworthiness. So,
when do we have another debate, or like when do we have
next
another?
one is February something or another. It's in a couple weeks, so not before the Iowa caucuses, though. People have already gone to the polls before. Anything you want to say to the voters, Cha, before we go? This is the last chance you get to talk to them before the first votes are cast. We've done so many of these. So
I'm gonna say right now, people. Sometimes I forget we're talking to people, but like we are.
We are.
This is there are other humans in this world.
Yeah.
The world is not an illusion created inside of my own head. Yes. I would just say, look, people, there's really two choices at this point right now. If you want to go the quote unquote safe route, you can vote for Joe Biden. And that's the only thing you can vote for. Buttigieg is not going to do it. God knows Amy Klobuchar is not going to do it. If you want to go the other route, there's a couple things you can do. Tom Steyer's, making some noise and looking pretty good in certain ways, but realistically, you only have two options, which are Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren. Elizabeth Warren jumped to the front of the pack, but it's kind of like that scene in the first Fast and the Furious movie, where that one guy is racing Johnny Tran or whatever, and he hits his nitro and he jumps ahead, and he's like, aha, I'm gonna get you, and then Johnny Tran is like, too soon, and then he hits his nitro and he jumps back ahead, and that's kind of like what happened with Biden and Warren. Like, Warren jumped ahead too soon, wasn't able to hold the lead, and I think that's all she wrote. Like, I think that's all she gets in this election. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe she'll be the nominee.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it's going to come down to, if you want to do the quote unquote safe thing, you can vote for Joe Biden.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that myself and other progressives would say that safety is an illusion. Joe Biden has massive problems as a candidate, and you may have another Hillary Clinton situation on your hands where you're scratching your head in 2020 trying to figure out why we didn't win the White House.
Mm-hmm.
And in the meantime, you've got Bernie Sanders weathering these attacks from, Elizabeth Warren, the Daily Beast, Hillary Clinton.
Jonathan's mom.
Yeah, vicious. But at the same time, he got an endorsement. He's been endorsed by Cenk Uygur of the Young Turks. Some of the woke people out there said, oh, Cenk Uygur is a problematic person because of some things that he used to say back when he was a Republican. And so Bernie Sanders had to rescind that endorsement. Now Bernie Sanders has been endorsed by Joe Rogan. And I don't think you can overstate how much influence Joe Rogan has on such a large swath of the country.
Yeah, #1 podcast in the world. So
yeah, so we hear some of these same woke people saying, "Oh, Bernie needs to distance himself from Joe Rogan." Joe Rogan's got some problematic beliefs about certain things, and I have some questions about his beliefs. But this is one you don't send this one back.
Mm-mm. Yeah. No, and they're all like digging up tweets from like 2012 where he like questioned Obama's citizenship, and it's like, I don't think he'd say that now, and he's deleting the tweets, so it's obviously like he doesn't stand by it. And my goodness, people, like, we're gonna purity test everybody into non-existence at this point. I don't know who's pure enough for these people anymore. It's like these perfect people that have never made a mistake or had a wrong opinion. I view it as a plus if you've had a bad opinion and you change, honestly. Like, I think we have to allow for that. And if we never let people out of their bad opinions, it's like, what incentive is there for anyone to ever change?
So. At the same time, I think we should privilege people who have had the right of opinion for longer periods of time.
Like Bernie, I understand.
Saying, it's,
But we can't kick people out of society for this. And these are the same people who believe in second chances for actual criminals, too. And it's like, we're not even going to give the benefit of the doubt to people who are like 89-90% on your side about everything. So
yeah, I would just put it down to that. If you think in these first couple states that you're gonna vote for somebody who's not Bernie Sanders or Joe Biden, and that's gonna make one of them jump into first place, and suddenly they're gonna have a chance, and next thing you know, they're gonna run the board. I'm gonna tell you, I'm not a polling expert. I'm not 538, or whatever, but I don't see it happening. I don't think that's gonna happen. I think you have two choices in this election right now. And, do what you want. But I think if Bernie comes out of these early states with some wins, that changes the national narrative, and that changes things going into South Carolina and stuff like that. And he could have, and don't kid yourselves, Donald Trump is terrified of Bernie Sanders. He wants to have the fight with Joe Biden. They're still trying, the Democrats in the Senate are trying to decide whether they're going to let the Republicans drag Joe Biden's son in front of the Senate for a fucking show trial.
Yeah.
If you want that to be our candidate, more power to you. But
Hillary Clinton 2.0.
Do the right thing.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I'm just saying. I think there are two choices for these next couple states, and you had this choice. You had this choice in 2016. We went the other way. We said back then, hindsight is 2020. So let's see if that's really the case. Mm-hmm. Are we tired of losing? Do we want to go with the winner this time?
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. Yeah. Did you, Bob? Did you want to say anything to the voters before we sign off?
No, that's fair. And I just think people need to remember, whoever the Democrats pick, the Republicans are going to throw the book at them. So going with a safe choice because you think the Republicans are going to be nice to the candidate or they're going to now finalist fault, you're fooling yourself. They turned John Kerry, an actual war hero who was running against basically a draft dodger, George Bush, into the he's the bad guy, and they make fun of him with like band-aids on their eye under their eyes at the convention. It's like they'll do this to anybody. Doesn't matter what the facts are. Just go with what feels right. Don't go on what you think maybe the Republicans will be nice to us if we choose Amy Klobuchar. Like, it's not going to happen. They'll find something about Amy Klobuchar that they don't like, and they'll just vote for the Republican, or they won't vote. You know what I mean? It doesn't matter. It's like you don't go off of that because one thing you can. I don't trust Republicans, but I trust Republicans to be Republicans. They will always do that. They will always take whatever candidate you put up, and they'll drag them through the mud. So just don't worry about that. Just assume that as a given. Don't take that into consideration, I would say. So
yeah, and I would add also, just don't vote for who you think other people are voting for. Vote for who inspires you truly.
Right.
Vote for who you really think you can trust to have your interest at heart. Don't try to play this three-dimensional chess thing where you're trying to figure out what voters in another state are going to do, because guess what? If whoever wins these first 3 states, guess what? They're probably going to win South Carolina, and then they're going to win, and then they're going to go on, and then it's going to be the White House, right? Yeah. Howard Dean. But I'm just saying, like, don't, I don't want to criticize people. They say, it's critical thing now. Everybody's a pundit now. And that's basically what we do. That's what we do. We try to pundit these things and try, we're, probably we consume more news than the average citizen, I guess. And so we comment on it. But my conclusion from that is that there's a candidate who inspires me, who I think I can trust on the issues, who is right, seems to be right on a lot of the issues, and who I think could have won last time. And I'm not going to try to second guess that and try to finagle a way where it could be somebody else, or what about this person, or they've got a couple positives. It's like, just go with who you think is, go with who you like, because chances are, if you like them, chances are other people like them too.
Absolutely. But Chad, not only are we going to New Hampshire, Tom Harkin, we're going to South Carolina, and Oklahoma, and Arizona.
Where else?
And North Dakota, and New Mexico, and we're going to California, and Texas, and New York, and we're going to South Dakota, and Oregon, and Washington, and Michigan, and then we're going to Washington D.C. to take back the White House.
We're going to take back the White House. Yeah.
He's still eligible to run. I'd just like to point that out.
Yeah. If I were a candidate, I would memorize that speech exactly, and I would go up on stage and I would give it again, and I would do it like word for word. That'd be so dope.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
So.
Also from Vermont.
Yeah. All right. Well. Anyways, cool. I guess we can kind of conclude our broadcast there. I suppose. I don't know.
How are you going to top that? But all right, well, we'll see you on the other side of the caucus here, Chow. I'll try to get these out as soon as possible here, so that people can make an informed decision with our with our commentary here.
I think like timeliness more than any time in the past, and perhaps more than any time in the future. I think this one is a timely one. Yep. But and I'm gonna put in some work. I'm gonna start working on the PBS one and work back on that one a little bit, and we can do something with that in the future too.
For sure.
But like I said, I would rather have this one out now, and then be 2 months late with the PBS one, rather than be 1 month late with the PBS one and then be 1 month late with this one after the caucus.
Yeah, no doubt. But all right, well, thanks a lot for taking on all those notes and everything, Cha. But
all right, yeah, thanks, Bob. Good luck. We'll talk to you soon.
All right, have a good night.
Yep. Have a good day. Bye-bye.
Join the Rob Burgess Show mailing list. Go to tinyletter.com/The Rob Burgess Show and type in your email address. Then respond to the automatic message. Also, please make sure to comment, follow, like, subscribe, share, rate, and review everywhere the podcast is available, including iTunes, YouTube, SoundCloud, Stitcher, Google Play Music, Twitter, Internet Archive, TuneIn, RSS, and now Spotify. The official website for the podcast is www.therobburgessshow.com. You can find out more about me by visiting my website, www.thisburgess.com. If you have something to say, record a voice memo on your smartphone and send it to therobburgessshow@gmail.com. Include voice memo in the subject line of the email. Also, if you want to call or text the show for any reason, the number is 317-674-3547. Until next time.